It's a secret, but it's an open secret. It's plain to all, but only a few see and understand. Then don't you understand this parable? Then how will you understand any parable? It's a secret, but it's an open secret. It's plain to all, but only a few see and understand. Then Jesus said to them, don't you understand this parable? Then how will you understand any parable? It's a secret, but it's an open secret. It's plain to all, but only a few see and understand. Then don't you understand this parable? Then how will you understand any parable? It's a secret, but it's an open secret. It's plain to all, but only a few see and understand. Then Jesus said to them, don't you understand this parable? Then how will you understand any parables?
Well. If it ain't you lot, and by you lot I mean that big goose egg zero on number of viewers. But I'm sure over time some of you will trickle in. Glad to be here, even though I'm sorry I'm a little late. You know, I normally do these in the mornings, but I was traveling this morning, so I could not do it. But that did give me the time to. Give me 1 second. I'm going to pull this down here, and then click up here, and then mute my piano, and then come back here and pull this up, and then come back here. And this is all the stuff that I probably could have and should have figured out while that intro is playing. But since I don't see any viewers, I'm not that worried about it. It's just me by myself in the ether. Ain't nothing wrong with that. But I did want to briefly show everyone that there is something the TLC needs to attend to. It was first posted on X by one Kale Zeldin. I'm going to share my screen. Share the entire screen. Screen 2 for me. And let's actually go full screen because I'm not removing the bubble. Okay. So you can see through that V&A bubble there. It says the telepathy tapes and the recession of our modern myth. And just so you know, this actually, and we're going to make sure that we like that. This actually spells the death knell for materialism. And I listened to all the available episodes today. It was an incredible experience. I highly recommend. And Kale said, I do not know why the TLC is not talking about them. Does this mean I have to? And yes, that's what it means to be a part of the TLC. If no one's talking about the thing you want to talk about, well, looks like you're going to have to you're going to have to become a little content creator like the rest of us. You're going to have to suck it up, turn on your cam, and you're going to have to say what you're thinking. You're going to have to talk about it. I guess you don't have to, but you're just holding out on us. But I told Kale, hey, I'm streaming right now if you want to come find me. And so that's that. But with that said, I think we should just go ahead and get to the beats here. No reason to hold off on the beats. And let's see if we can find some see what this is. See if we can find some samples. And these are royalty free. Thank you. Given to us by citizendjlabs.gov. So we are going to use what Leviathan gave us, baby.
Pine that grows on the edge of a Kansas bluff and wars with the wind when the weather is rough is like this Lascar, this love of mine. She would hunger. Lascar used to ride on a mouse gray Mustang. Word to beware, we'll be over, we're coming.
This is it. Chad, what up? Christmas dinner. Cruising with the missus. Looking for some mistletoe. Sometimes you just gotta smooch your baby. No worries, brother. Hey, Kale's here. You want to come talk to me about these lovely nonverbal autists? If not, I can just keep making beats. I make this beat before Kale gets here. Oh, he's here. Too late. Howdy, Kale.
What's up, brother?
Dude, that was incredible. Hold on, I got to remove this. Now it's just me.
Yeah, I'm going to shut off.
Now we're virtually alone. Now we're virtually alone.
Okay, am I echoing?
I can't hear you echoing, but maybe you are. Let me
Yeah.
Oh, that should fix the echoing. There you go.
What about now?
Yep. I can't hear the echo still. Yep,
Okay, we're
good for you.
We're cool, man.
Sick.
So I'm going to go to a spot where I don't have a window behind me because I hate that. Drives me nuts.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Ever precious.
You just don't like having the light behind you. You know, you want to be
Yeah.
looking towards the light.
Yeah,
There's
that's
nothing wrong with
right.
that.
That's right. So I don't like that either. How about this? Okay, there we go. All right. So yeah, so you did you listen to the whole thing?
I listened to the whole thing, double speed. I slowed it down to listen to the one guy's music, and then sped it back up. And so yeah, that it was all on the in one go ride in the car ride.
Oh
today.
wow, you just mowed through it then.
Yep. I just inhaled it basically.
Yeah.
I'm like crying at one point. I turned to my wife. I'm like, this podcast is tearing me up right now. Like it's been a while since a podcast did that to me.
Yeah, there were 2 times for me that it shredded me. Sometime I think it was in episode 3. And then the one that really got me was I think it's 9 when the kid dies.
Spoiler alert, but yeah,
no, but I didn't say the name. So anyway, but holy smokes, man. I was like, I was, I listened, I do the bulk of my listening in the morning to everything, because I walk or run my dogs. And, so it's when I have the free time to do it. And I'm just like, that was like a walking day. So I wasn't even running. I was just sort of walking and all of a sudden I hear this sort of thing and it just drops like a bomb, and I literally stopped walking, and like my eyes just started leaking, and yeah, but 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 that's just sort of the affective part of it, right? I mean, that's just
Yeah.
the sort of the human element of it. I still can't wrap my head around the content, just like the like. I mean,
Like the facts on the ground kind of a thing.
yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I've never, it's weird because you all know me. Like, I'm a pretty like woo kind of guy, right? I mean,
There's levels, you know.
yeah, right, right,
For your
right.
context, I think, yeah, you're definitely not one of the stodgy Catholics.
Right. No, I'm not. And I don't know if you were in that live stream I did with Paul some months back, and we were talking about They Flew, and
Yep.
Bethel was there, and she was like having none of it. She was just like, whatever, man, y'all are crazy. And I didn't quite realize how woo friendly I was until
Yeah.
then. But anyway,
Well,
the
Rod
long
had
and the,
been working on you subconsciously.
yeah. Well, maybe I found Rod. I mean, it's like
Oh,
there's
there you
a
go. Maybe you beat him
yeah.
to it. Yeah.
No,
Scooped him
no,
a little bit.
I wouldn't make that claim, but I think game recognizes game, so
There you go.
woo recognizes woo.
Woo recognize woo. So too true. Woo recognize woo. Too true. Too true.
Too true, yeah. So I don't, so I wrote that original post about it on my Substack, and then I just resent it out, and then I did a re-listen. I'm re-listening to them because I want to write something about it just to sort of put it out there, and I'm having a hard time writing about it.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm just having a hard time writing about it. And
So maybe we should since it seems like maybe we're the only two people who have seen
Yeah.
it in the whole corner, because I feel like if other people had seen it, they would have been talking about it. I
Well, right.
bookmarked it as soon as you tweeted about it, and
Yeah.
I just hadn't, because it's not on YouTube as well. At least I didn't see it on
right,
YouTube.
right. And so that's one of those peculiar quirks about me is I rarely watch YouTube because I'm just rarely sitting at my desk.
Right.
I'm doing all these other things, and so I listen to everything. So like all of Paul's stuff, like I listen to everything.
Right.
The only show that I watch is really Grimm.
Good choice.
Because because of the branding and all of that, right? So so what's up, Flevis? So so I guess it might be the case that you and I are the only two in the corner who have watched it and want to talk about it. I mean, maybe there are a few here or there, but
yeah. So
but
the basic summary is that they have found through numerous means and the testimony of many witnesses that these autistic kids who are nonverbal, that is to say that they cannot form sentences, and who up until very recently have been considered
idiots, like definitionally idiots.
Yeah. And the way that they put it was that there's nobody in there.
Right, and that line kept. Boom. Did you
Yes.
feel that ever? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Good. Yeah.
There's nobody in there, is what
Yeah.
they kept saying to these parents of these children. But through some specific speech pathology techniques that they call writing, some of these
they call spelling
or spelling. Yeah,
spelling.
sorry, you're right, spelling.
Which is anybody follows my Twitter feed knows that that immediately piqued my interest. But
well,
go
and
ahead.
the girl Lily, I think is her name.
Mm-hmm.
She refers to us, verbal users, voice users.
Voice users,
as she calls us voice users for one, and then she also calls us muggles.
Yeah,
which I was like,
it's perfect. I
bingo.
know.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then of course J.K. Rowling makes an appearance as well.
That's
so
right.
That, there's that connection. But they found, I'm bearing the lead. They found that these children have displayed meaningful powers of telepathy. Is the phrase they use? Telepathy.
Right.
Mind reading, consciousness sharing, bilocation, the stuff of visions and saints, reliably and consistently, essentially. So they have all these magical powers by using spelling. and it's also the least of these, right?
Yeah.
It's also the, it would be you'd be hard pressed to find more competent and capable people being treated worse, is
Right.
maybe one way to put it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So like that's such an interesting, like there's this sort of social justice overlay that's
Yep.
very real.
Ableism, right.
Right, absolutely. It's very real. And clearly Kai Dickens, she's the director, she's the writer and the director of the series. Clearly that was like her original kind of entree into this whole story. But it's so much, and again, I don't want to denigrate or downplay any of that. That's real stuff. And and I remember one of the moms was talking about just like going on vacation as a family, right? Like just the thought of doing that, like nobody wants to be around you, like your
Right.
kids are considered unruly,
Well,
and all this sort of stuff.
The story of that kid, John Paul.
Yeah.
So they go to Savannah to Tybee Beach.
Right. Oh, so
This is where I'm from. This is where I was just coming from, back up to Asheville. So we were seeing my mom starting the Christmas season, kind of a thing.
Wow.
And that beach, particularly at night, what has been a great source of spiritual sustenance for me.
No way. That's so
yes.
cool.
It's,
wow.
And specifically night swimming and all this stuff. So it was like, I was seriously like at some point wanted to like pull over and be like,
you were vibing with this thing. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, absolutely vibrating. And so, yeah, that was another very, and then of course my father is on the autistic spectrum, as they say. So there was also that, but he's highly verbal, and I think he's not the type of guy that if he had clairvoyance or telepathy, he would keep it a secret. So
yeah, well, it's so interesting, that divide, between the verbal and the nonverbal is a real one, and right, it's kind of this sort of catch-all category, right, and so we've got these divisions within them, and it's a shame, that we don't quite have different language for it, and I think that will come, because but and again, you get it, it's like on the way towards something, right? And so I like the kind of spectrum language, because that saves it from being just like those weirdos over there and all of us normies over here, right? I think it might help in that regard, because really the theme of the show is radical connectivity.
Yes,
right?
Yes. So for Phoebus, and I'll do my best radio host here. The time is 5 minutes till 4 on the Eastern Coast, and we're here with Cale Zeldin, going over our thoughts from the podcast series, The Telepathy Tapes, and the recession of our modern myth. So yeah, it's a podcast
McMo,
series.
I could butt it. You could put a little banner on the bottom that says telepathy tape discussion, but
yeah. You know what? I should do that.
Yeah,
I should do that. Let's get official here.
I think Grim would appreciate that. I think he would appreciate that.
Ironically, this is where I make a lot of this show on Sundays is where I make a lot of the branding.
Oh, that's so funny. I didn't know that. That's
ironically,
great.
I don't have that much branding.
You're right. Yeah. You give it all out. You seed it out to the other channels.
Well, let's see. I can do
that was a McMo masterpiece. I love that. That line floats in my head all the time.
Yeah. If that's all I'm ever famous for, that would be a life well lived, I think. But
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So one thing that I wanted to talk about was a couple of things kind of came to mind with the whole verbal nonverbal thing.
Yep.
Which was one, just the how speaking is this is actually a Jonathan Dumire point. In my categorization, at least, the fact of speech as a type of dance, that there's actually it's a motor function.
I love that.
It's there's a type of athleticism required, with the coordination of your tongue and your voice and your lungs and your diaphragm and all of that stuff, and so that was kind of an interesting thing, that these people were kind of like, in some sense, absent from the body, you could say. And then the other piece that kept coming up for me for some reason was the idea of garments of skin.
Okay, go with that. That's cool. Go with that.
And the idea of like, because I found myself wanting to kind of deify these folks on the spot, right? Like to take everything that they say, as gospel truth, just because they had proven themselves with the scientific tests that they do at the beginning of the series, right?
Signs and wonders, right? No, I mean, it's like those are real things, and it really, when I think of it in that frame, you ever do this game in your head, where you're thinking about like Peter, Saint Peter, like Peter, as in the Apostle Peter, and you're like, or Paul, or but it's like, what could he possibly have said to me, if I ran into him at the town square, that would have been like, screw it, I'm gonna follow Jesus. Like, I mean, and so it had, so that's why I think when PVK talks about this sort of stuff, he talks about the early church, and he's drawing from a couple of different things, but I can't remember all the stuff. That in some sense, Christianity was the signs and wonders bit, right? And so you bought Paul or Peter or whoever, right?
Well,
in
Paul
part
says
because
he doesn't come with great words, right? Like that was part of the thing, was that,
which is ironic, but
yeah.
So to your point, you're listening to these stories and you're like, you want to take them like, oh, like they're tapping into like the source of the mystery itself, right? And maybe so, maybe not. I mean, who knows? But I was also struck by so you're talking about their abilities as having a kind of, think about it from like a resource cost standpoint. Remember one time listening to, maybe it was Peugeot, no, maybe it was Vervaeke, maybe it was Peterson, but just talking about like the cost for us to be able to see, for instance, right? That the amount of resources that go into allowing our eyes to see in the way that our eyes can see is a tremendous outlay of resources. And of course, everything's trade-offs. And so if you think about all of our various human capabilities as coming with cost, what is the cost to be able to speak or to be willing to speak? And then what is sacrificed because we can do this right now? And I think so that sort of was where my head went with it.
Yeah, and that just reminded me of so much, because that also makes me think of education and the type of and you see this every day, but like for me, the hardest challenge of school was literally to just stay still and not interject with my dumb jokes kind of a thing, you know, and so I would doodle, I would try to take notes, but
That's
so
so
I can
funny, by the way.
I can relate to that.
I can relate to the same thing. I was a terrible high school student,
right?
But I became a good student in college because I liked literature, right? And so I could make my running commentary in a seminar format about the thing we were talking about.
Yeah.
And instead of being a cut up in high school or a smartass in high school, all of a sudden I'm like a kind of like a good contributor to the seminar table.
Right. Yeah. And it's also great to have a teacher who rewards a kid who's actually paying attention and even trying to engage, even if they're doing it clumsily. But what made me think of that was the fact of like all of the kids, it seemed like at one point, maybe not all of them, but you get the impression that these kids feel alien in the situations that they're in, because they get put in these special ed classes and they get repeatedly shown numbers, shapes, and colors as if they were, substantially farther back intellectually than they actually are. And then so that kind of twofold of like, the what is it that we use in America, the German Austrian education system or whatever it is that they're making good cogs. But it's like
the industrial model, basically.
Right. So the travesty is that these kids aren't getting an education, but it's really it's also probably the lack of education that's freeing them in some ways.
Saving them.
Their ability to not engage in that kind of, the cogs of Mordor, as it were, is what gives them the freedom in some way. And then too, when you hear about the ways that they are educating themselves, it sounded a lot like TLC to me.
Totally. I thought that. No, I know.
Meet on the
hill. Meet on the hill. I know. Amen. No, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And but then the other thing that was like, towards the end, I guess it was, it's funny too, because it's like the X-Men. They all kind of have their like their specific. It's kind of like of a type, but they're all kind of have their like specialties. And so the one kid who was kind of like, he could put his hand over a book and kind of just.
What?
Just get the whole, just get it all. And and like
right. I mean, so just to sort of put some technical language on that, right? So these stories, right? These testimonies, these vignettes are challenging what we think of as, we talk about classical mechanics and quantum mechanics, right? Sort of the Newtonian world of physics versus the sort of the quantum world of physics. You know, it's like we have this sort of classical model of epistemology, and now we have this like weird quantum epistemology that, like, how do you know things? Well, typically I know things because I talk to somebody, I read a book, but it takes some time, or I go and I do something and I physically stir something, or I touch the hot oven, or whatever it is. And so therefore it's a very clear classical causal epistemology. Whereas like these kids are knowing things that they can't know. They can't know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And is like, yeah, the kid who talked about in heaven reading Faulkner and Steinbeck.
Yeah.
And that like yeah, like that was just, mind blowing. And the quantum stuff is paradoxical. Yep, right up my alley. I actually find that a lot of the conversation about quantum, it does that thing that Chris Green, I think, talked about, that a couple of people kind of highlighted, but that kind of simplifying it. And I think that this is like apropos in the the telepathy tapes conversation as well, because you hear these people trying to communicate this experience that is outside of basically what we're allowed to think,
Right.
that
Right.
and to the degree that it makes you uncomfortable, I think it's also like you see the scales of materialism falling from your eyes or from your ears as you're listening.
Right.
And so like there's those two things going on where it really is like a you get, and two, that's they really do bury the lead in my opinion, because the spiritual nature of the whole thing to me is the most interesting part. Like,
well, right, but why do you go ahead? Sorry.
Well, because I guess coming from my I'm extremely high in openness, so I've been on the Rupert Sheldrake train for a long time, and multic resonances and the like.
And audience, just so you know, that Sheldrake makes an appearance. I think it's episode 4 or 6, something like that. But
if only Jordan Peterson can make it onto the telepathy tapes, then then the corner will be interested, I guess.
So true.
Or the sphere. Yeah. So, but yeah. So there's that aspect of it where it's like it's a fight against materialism, I guess, in some sense, where they're really trying to like, because you could hear the production value and the upspeak and the timbre and the just kind of, it's an NPR, it's Radio Lab. It's yeah.
I
mean, for me, and to me, that's like classic rock. Like that was my college years. I missed. I miss the glory days of like NPR and early podcasts and that kind of, the Silicon Valley. You can wear a stupid polo and thick glasses, and the girls will still like you, kind of a thing. Oh shoot, I just described you. I didn't mean to.
Hey. yeah. That's right. Don't worry, they don't like me. It's all right.
Yeah, that was totally accidental. I gotta remember, I'm with a Gen Xer here. I gotta, can't be too millennial heavy. But
although I do think I'm a Gen Xer who skews more millennial.
I can relate.
I have a whole theory on this, but anyway,
I can relate to that. I feel like a millennial who skews a little Gen
X,
Gen Z-ish the other way. I actually have quite a bit of bitterness towards Gen X. I think they get away with a lot.
Interesting. We should talk about that. That'd be cool.
The boomers get heat. The millennials catch heat.
Yeah.
But generation conversations, that's of the past of TLC. That happened like, what was it, like months ago? Might as well have been years.
Years ago, yeah. Boomerality, of Michael's boomerality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Chad, I actually thought about this too. Chad put it in the comments, a Gnostic epistemology.
Mm-hmm.
I did feel like this does a very good job of putting down, and even the spiritual stuff, I wonder how much of it was edited, and it is highly selected. That they're not actually taking. Like I didn't go on the website. I haven't had time yet to go on the website and watch the videos and see like how this actually happens, in physical space.
Yeah.
But I did. There was the kind of redemption of the body missing, even in the like spiritual realm that these folks talk about.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very like we just we die, and some of this in the NDE conversations kind of freaks me out a little bit too, where I'm like,
how much have you done with NDE sleuthing?
Generally not that much. Like I'm not the type who needs to be convinced.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of like, if something, I very much, I guess, and I'm also kind of Calvinist, so I very much trust the Holy Spirit's guiding when it comes to woo, and
Yep.
I don't really kind of spend late nights, reading spooky stories or like stories of demons and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So
For the
can I
most
just
part,
ask you a quick question about that?
yeah. Go for
So
it.
like in a kind of Calvinist imaginary, that stuff is sort of allowable, but just not something you fixate upon. Is that sort of the rough?
Well, I should give my full context because I definitely don't speak from Calvinism. I was using it as a shorthand to say that
Yeah,
I
I
kind of
know.
trust in the providence.
I'm not
But
trying to pin you down on anything.
yeah,
I'm
no,
just curious.
I'm happy to be pinned down if you
Mhm.
can manage it. It would help me to know, But
Okay.
but yeah, so I was raised fundamentalist Baptist, kind of small church, but very
Yep.
intelligent parents,
Yep.
genius level parents, probably 145 plus easily.
Wow. Okay.
Both of them, and just full of energy too. Like to this day, I still
How are
know
you not autistic then?
because my dad is.
No, I'm saying, how are you not autistic is my question.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I think that I don't know. It neither me nor my sister are. Probably good health. Who knows? Providence of
Okay.
God. But so I grew up like listening to apologetics tapes and hearing my
Okay.
parents disagree with the pastor and all of this stuff.
Right.
And then by the time I was like in high school, I learned about Calvinism and really liked it because of the things in life that were giving me anxiety in the time of being a young Christian.
Yeah.
Like it for me, it was the only explanation to why I could be saved and still be sinning.
Yeah.
In a way,
Yeah,
was
I got
that
it.
this
Totally get it.
sanctification thing was going to take a while, and that I was totally depraved. So I was going from death to life, and some Christians, God does it in a day, and some Christians learn about it when they're a kid and have to struggle their whole life, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like a helpful and just I had friends who were part of the local PCA church.
Got it.
So it kind of that's a Presbyterian Church of America.
Yeah, I'm with you. So then to put it in my language, what problem did it solve for you? It sounds like it's anxiety on some level.
It was a specific type of honestly, I think that it was kind of like the like autistic rule set that kind of allowed me to be creative.
Yeah, I get it.
Past that, yeah.
All right.
It was kind of like the rules of the game theologically in some real way.
I think in my world, it's like learning the hard lines so that I can kind of negotiate things. The clarity really helped me. Even though it's funny because I think both you described yourself as being high in openness. I am too, but I'm like one of these weird high in openness guys who like needs some bright, or needed, I should say, really bright lines.
Yeah. That makes total sense to me. In some ways, I'm not sure though. Like it's one of those things. Like I'm not sure to what extent I was just kind of following trends because at that time for an evangelical
young restless and reform and
Southern Baptist going in there like all of the energy in kind of low church American Protestantism was kind of gravitating towards the what was it called, the young restless and reformed.
Yeah, I just mumbled it, sorry. Young restless and reformed.
Yep, that's it. And so which also kind of it brings along a lot of baggage, but I meant to say this. I grew up talking to my dad about kind of apologetics a lot, and the kind of like really in two contexts. One, my dad had kind of been thoroughly convinced at points of his life, and it was really challenging for him that the real question was the age of the earth. So that was his kind of like he recognized the science is saying one thing and his tradition and his tradition's interpretation of the Bible as saying another thing. So he kind of was on the vanguard of like, that community watching, listening to people like Hugh Ross. Back in the day. So, and he was also, to maybe he shouldn't have, but I'm kind of very grateful that he did. He really included me in on a lot of that kind of wrestling and searching.
That's cool.
So that kind of set a precedence, I guess, for me to just kind of not be afraid of, being a Christian who thought deeply about stuff, and then it's kind of a long tail from there. But
all right, so okay, so then you were saying that you referenced sort of as a kind of default-ish Calvinist, you're listening to the telepathy tapes, and what is happening?
Yeah, so I'm not a default Calvinist. I'm way beyond that now. I'm
Okay,
a
okay,
radical,
okay.
universalist, radical fetus. A lot of the, Thomas Aquinas and those folks, they would have lots of stern words for me.
That's funny.
But yeah, and I actually I think one thing to help explain where I am is when I got kicked out of the church.
Yeah, I
and
remember.
fired.
I heard a live stream of you of that before. I think it was on Chad's channel. Like,
you were on one of the first live. You were on the first live stream I ever joined on TLC.
Oh no, I didn't
Yeah.
know that. That's funny.
It was PVK, and I clicked the link thinking it was Discord, and just just kind of just went with the flow.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's another story we could talk about. But yeah, so
you get kicked out.
I get kicked out, and up until that point, I was kind of very comfortable being I don't even remember the word for it now, but a cessationist. That miracles had kind of stopped.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
We could really use the kind of historical, basically all of the miracles are talked about in the Bible. God does them for very specific reasons at very specific times. The natural law is kind of good enough for the rest of creation, and we shouldn't expect anything else. And then basically I get fired from the church, and so I'm kind of free for the first time to actually start, which I had already done. I was never good at just kind of holding the company line, but I started exploring more. And over time, that kind of just completely, it wasn't like one faded into the other. It was like because I don't remember I don't remember the phases, but eventually I was just kind of full woo. And a part of that was it actually took me a while to justify it philosophically, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But it really it was because of a kind of radical encounter with epistemic humility, and some spiritual experiences that are hard to put into words, but that the gist of it was, you should not assume to be able to know how to know.
Right.
Yep, that's kind of, you're saying checkmate on the first move of chess, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of I was so arrogant at the time too. I thought that this was I thought of this, but it was epistemic humility, and so I kind of have from that point tried harder and harder to be epistemically humble, so that when I come now to a thing like this, I didn't need any of the explanations of what materialism was. They could have cut out all of Rupert Sheldrake's.
Okay.
I was already.
You already there?
I was on the Sheldrake train when I saw the title, when you posted it on Twitter. So,
right.
So in that sense, and this is actually something I thought about too, why maybe some parts of the corner have not been interested in this, because it's kind of like, yeah, of course they flew. Yeah, of course the nonverbal autistic children are meeting in telepathic space and teaching each other how to communicate with us normies, and comforting each other when one of them passes away.
Yeah. What's the big deal, Cale? Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But I still thought that it's really worth talking about. One, because there seemed to be a kumbaya, a very Matt C. kumbaya nature to the telepathic space. Although there was the mention that the guy who lives in Israel, he really only hangs out with the other Jews. The other Jews.
I love it. That was great. That's right. That was funny. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. So. And why did I say the Calvinist thing? Oh yeah, because I haven't read They Flew. I kind of still there's a lingering of course. And also, of course, I'll hear about those stories when I need to hear about those stories, kind of a thing.
Do you do you feel like there's a decent residue of, kind of I don't want to say anti-Catholicism, but is there still a kind of, you know what I mean? I get it. I'm not trying to cause fights or anything like that.
I'm not trying to be too woo here today, but I did on the drive up think to myself, it might be a good exercise to review the 95 Theses and just kind of see how many of those I'm kind of still vibing with, and how many, because I do know that most of them, well, not, I shouldn't say most of them. My memory of the situation is that a lot of the 95 Theses were fixed, essentially. like
yeah.
like
Yeah.
indulgences, for instance.
Right. Yeah, no, that's funny. Yeah, right. Just the you know how PVK always talks about like opponent processing and all that sort of stuff. I know it's a Vervaekeism, but I think he's right, and he's using it as a way of understanding the various reformations, and I think that's true. I mean, I think that when you look at the reformations and the counter reformations and all that, a lot of that stuff was whatever, it gets worked out, but at the same time, you still but we started killing each other, like that's kind of hard to deal with.
Yep. Oh, here we go. Now it's a party. Welcome, Phlebas.
Phlebas, what's up, brother?
Speaking of anti-Calvinist, no.
Yeah. So I I'm gonna just want to keep going here with this a second.
Yeah, keep going.
McMo. So they flew, for instance. Like I read it, and in a certain sense, like it's out of my tradition, right? I mean, it's Roman Catholic, and even like within like certain Roman Catholic, circles, like I'm definitely not a modernist Catholic, but I'm also not a trad, right?
It's easier to. So, which part of the new Notre Dame aren't you okay with?
Yeah, right.
Hey.
I mean, you know what part I'm not okay with it.
This is why I'm here.
Yeah,
I have that question actually. I'm just
go
gonna.
ahead.
It was getting weird because I was like the only viewer for most of the time, so I thought I should just jump on.
Yeah.
But just keep going.
3 or more were gathered.
Yeah.
We've got 3 now watching, plus us 3, so that's 6 of us. We got a quorum.
Okay.
We got
on the
President
They
Foxman.
Flew thing. I really liked They Flew. He basically just says scientifically they flew. You can't deny it.
Right.
And I really like that. It's more troubling to me that they don't fly anymore.
Yeah. No, I know. Well, yeah. That's a whole. Go ahead.
Let me do the Kierkegaardian twist, which is, Phlebas, why aren't you flying?
Well, that's what's troubling to me. Like, honestly, it seems like it was sort of commonplace and accepted within their worldview, but also they were truly flying. Like there would be like a public parade and somebody would be flying around. And I get convicted when Grimm is provoking us and being like, where's the signs, guys? You're supposed to be doing greater than this. And that really cuts. So I love the book. But it's like, why not anymore? So
I've always chalked that up to the kind of, I grew up going to revivals, Southern Baptist revivals, and it's like, and you'll get a head football coach turned traveling preacher, probably because of something he did with one of the cheerleaders, but that's another story. He'll come by to pump up the people, and he'll say, with the faith of a mustard seed. Now, do you know how small a mustard seed is?
Yeah, I grew up on something different. So
you ever seen a mountain move? Look at the lack of faith in this nation.
Right.
But I do think that there's some truth to that, right? Like, of course, because when we hear that they flew, our first thought is like, okay, yeah, probably not. And I still find myself, and when I ask myself why, when Jesus says greater things ye shall do, he of course he wasn't talking to me. He wasn't talking to little old McMo.
Right.
Little old McMo's too sinful, or just normal, or whatever the excuse is. But I think the fact of the excuse is so universal. But I think one of the things about the telepathy tapes is like, to what degree is that connected to our language capacities?
Right. And our Technopolis, right? I mean, I think that one of the arguments, one of the things you see, that why did they flew, all of those stories that are, why did it happen when it happened, right? And in part, perhaps the reason why it doesn't happen now is because modernity definitively won, right? I mean, that to simply render the possible impossible and the impossible possible, you're done. Like, nobody's looking around for it, right? And so I do think that the ambient preconditions of the world matter in increasingly creepy ways, right? Or profound ways, right? And so it's like, if you listen on the telepathy tapes, like, so much is contingent on whether or not the people around these kids believe them. So fascinating, right? That power of that faith is a necessary precondition, right? Quiet is a necessary precondition. Electric signals are like confounders that make it difficult for them to kind of do this work. So it's like it's I don't know, it's complicated.
Well, and this is
So
what this is part of why earlier, Kale, I said that it was it reminded me of garments of skin, because there's this idea that kind of that like when we fall, we have these coverings that we put over ourselves. This self just and this is a very reformed notion, but this self justification, right? That it's an attempt to cover our own shame. These garments of skin, or garments of leaves, or garments of skin is the one God gives us, I guess. But so there's this idea that like we use our words to justify our actions, and these kids cannot use their words to justify their actions.
Yeah, right.
And so I was wondering if like, because that makes me think that that's the type of thing that's connected to, and it also makes me think of Kierkegaard when he says that basically, you always know exactly what you need to do, and it's to love your neighbor. And the first thought that pops into your mind is probably when you think, how can I love my neighbor? It's probably the Holy Spirit that answers that. But we think, no. And then the game is afoot, because we can, with our words kind of justify or non-justify anything.
Well, and words also, I think it's important, like words are noise, right? It's, and again, I'm being wide open and associative right now, but I'm always struck by, like, if you look at the unfolding of the Harry Potter series, they get to the point where they learn to spell silently, right? That there's this, like the amateurs use Wingardium Leviosa or whatever, right? Real wizards, they just skip past that, right? They skip past it. And I don't, what the heck am I even talking about right now? You know what I mean?
So,
it's like, what?
Kale, do you connect the they flew thing and how that didn't really break their frame? Like they kind of accepted it at the time. Do you connect that to the UFO thing?
Yeah, yes. But hold on, before I get to the UFO thing, they begrudgingly accept it. Remember that the through line of they flew is, and this might be news more to the Protestants in the group than the Catholics, but the through line in they flew is that the Spanish Inquisition was,
they didn't want to fly.
They were, it was in place in part because they were worried that people would be way into the woo and skip over like the actual living out the faith, right? And so the Spanish Inquisition is, in part, not only is it for doctrinal purity reasons, right, but it's also to make sure that the credulous laity are not getting screwed over, by
you can curse
charlatans.
on this channel.
Okay, I didn't know. Yeah,
you can curse on this channel.
All right, I just didn't know. Like the credulous, so that the credulous lady wouldn't get fucked over by any number of woo masters who might be willing to do that in order, to earn some extra scratch.
Yeah. This is where we can bring in Luke, who was promoting a pure phenomenology yesterday. And I was like, whoa. This is too much woo. We need some grounding here. So,
yeah, which I would agree. Like, I mean, like part of the reason why, like, I consider myself a sacramental Christian, and do my best. I'm not very good at it because I'm not scrupulous enough, frankly. Is I try to ground myself in just like, okay, like I have to make my body do things. I have to, I have to, not eat meat on Fridays. Like I have to do these sorts of things because I am just gonna, fly on off. Just this like, I lose my tethering to the real maybe. But do you want to talk UFOs? Because
well, I more just the connection. I don't really necessarily. I listened to you and Steve, which was great.
Yeah.
And it's more just how you were talking that them flying was correct for like their frame and their worldview. And I go with like, so why don't they fly anymore? Well, maybe things are happening that I don't recognize. Basically, like we have our equivalent miracles.
Right. I don't think, well, okay, if they are, they're really cryptic and they're really hidden. I think that signs and wonders are for those who have eyes and ears to hear him, and if they don't, if there are not eyes and ears to hear him, I think they like to hide. You know, and again, this is so you can, even my language, like I'm listening to myself, I'm thinking about, this is the way that the aliens seem to be acting too, right? You know, whatever, blah, 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 right? So that there's some need for like a precondition of belief in order for these things to happen. And I was thinking about Peter, you know, from what we know, either through tradition or scripture, is that Peter only walked on water one time. Like why is that? You know, it's
Yeah, and why don't we spend all day in the third heaven?
right,
You know?
right.
Yeah.
And like, where is the third heaven? Is that like the hill? Like, I mean, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
All I know is that the modern version of Christianity that all of us have grown up in, either firmly and foundationally or even on the margins of, it's just not true.
Yeah. I'm calling for a moratorium on eyes to see. Every time somebody can't explain anything, they're like, you don't have eyes to see.
Yeah.
So we can I'll take that moratorium, and now I will start to say it's a secret, but it's an open secret. It's plain to all, but only if you see and understand.
Right.
A wise man once said that.
Not to switch it a little bit.
Well, Noah hasn't talked yet. Did Noah have anything to say
Go
on
ahead,
the
Noah.
telepathy tapes?
Well,
sorry, Phoebus. I'm gonna assert my authority here.
Look at you, my
as the
authority.
guy as the guy with his hands on the trigger here, and let Noah get 2 cents in.
Well, one thing that came to mind talking through this was you have the relationship between more liturgical practice and then more charismatic. It seems to be there's a little bit of a tension there.
Yeah.
And the way that I've processed it is looking at it from the idea of like a romantic relationship. How the liturgical is, you know, you have your patterns. I sit with my wife in the morning and drink coffee. I eat dinner with her. I do all these things. Yeah. And then the more charismatic or whatever you want to do is more the spontaneous factors. It's the I sweep my wife away and we're going to go to a resort, or we're going to go out to dinner, something out of the ordinary, something that's a surprise, and trying to find the balance. Because if you have one and not the other, then that's not going to be a very functional relationship.
I personally find the liturgical more mystical and romantic that way.
Yeah, I think that there becomes a way in which those things, to use your metaphor, get married at a kind of higher level. But there's a something that I use. I think there's a sociologist by the name of Victor Turner, or Henry Turner. Turner is his last name, and he talks about this notion of structure and communitas, right? And that, you know, it's sort of like, think of it, it's like spirit and structure. It's probably a better way for us to think about this. And
we've got a Protestant equivalent to that idea. It's called The Trellis and the Vine.
Okay, all right.
It drove me up a fucking wall. That I hate that book, but please, it was a good book. But I harbor some resentment. But please continue.
Well, just the idea that you know, these are the kind of the tensions, right? And if you and it's akin to what Peterson talks about in terms of, you know, chaos and order, right? I mean, it's perennial, right? It's enough of an idea here. And,
sorry, you had anything else?
No, I was just going to say that, like, you know, like for Catholics, you know, if you're a Catholic charismatic, the charismatic prayer groups and the praise and worship sessions and those kinds of things you do in fellowship is much more local and small, tends to be, although they have the big festivals of praise and all that sort of stuff. But it's never instead of Mass, right? It's never instead of, like, you know, me saying my rosary.
Well, and to me, that was the exact point that I was going to bring up, was that my understanding of the what is it called? It's called Eucharistic
adoration.
That you guys understand that is a miracle happening every single day that Mass, that communion is served. Right. That, you know, the Mass is done and communion is served. And so, like, that to me is like, Catholics should not have fallen, I think, as far as they have with that kind of doctrinal belief. But it's the same problem that would happen in a charismatic church, where the only miracles that happen are speaking in tongues and falling out on Sunday mornings. And
Right.
then everybody in the church goes back to normal materialistic modernity.
Right.
And that reminds me
Totally.
of a phrase that was said in the one of the kids one of the things they said was that love hates money.
Mm.
And
Wow.
I thought about that. That floored me. Just the like, this kid can't say this. You know, he had to type it out. But that
Yeah.
love hates money. And I wonder to what extent, you know, we can't see miracles because you can't serve two masters, and we all serve mammon.
Right, right, and to that, that's kind of what I was trying to get at with the whole they flew thing. It's like, you know, those things, you know, Mammon won, right? I mean, you know, it's powerful, right? I mean, you know, when Paul used to do that thing where, you know, you cover up one eye and you got all this sort of power, you know, with the discarded image and all that. Like, it's true, right? There's a tremendous amount of power that is harnessable when you can just pretend a whole element of reality doesn't exist. And so you know, so if you could just simply treat the world as your warehouse and pantry to do with what you will, you know, what can't you accomplish, you know? And so I think that brings us to you know, to modernity. It brings us to the Second World War. It brings us to the atomic bomb, you know. And it seems, at least for me, from my perspective, is like we're finally kind of at this point where we can actually, and again, I know it gets tricky here, but you know, the quantum discoveries are 100 years old now, and yet we have, and Peterson made this point early on in one of his talks, but he's like, we pretend we live in Newton's world, and we're it's not the whole story.
And the same thing goes for evolution, by the way, Kale. Like, everyone wants to believe that evolution is only you call it fittedness to the environment.
Right.
And there's this whole, you can call it beauty, you can call it desire, you can call it whatever. There's this whole component that scientists are desperately trying to come up with a mathematical equation for explaining like art in nature, and they can't do it. It doesn't work. And
The
and
quantum,
so the whole, like, yeah, go ahead.
The quantum stuff's actually getting worse too. We're figuring out that we know less and less and less. Like, it's getting more.
That's right.
We're figuring it out more, and it just becomes more paradoxical. So they keep, like, when you hear someone say physics is broken, it truly is right now. So
yeah, it leads one to think maybe that paradox, or you could even call it the absurd, is actually the foundation. But you know, that's another discussion. Actually, you know what? It's my channel. I can talk about whatever.
Yeah, right. You go, bro. You go.
But I want to throw something at Kale, actually.
Do it.
And this is a weird one, Kale. So when you said that Mammon won, so I was thinking about this yesterday, and I've been thinking about this more and more. It's the parable of the dishonest steward as a parable of our current time.
Wow.
It's like we're all the dishonest steward, like utilizing the technology.
Neil normally refers to this parable as the parable of and I'll do a little pig Latin here, the Fiki Snucker.
That's right. Yeah, it's right. I love that, Neil. That's great. No, that's right. That's right. Yeah, boy, you're throwing that one at me. Like, I could just warm me up a little bit, Neil. Jeez.
Neil, did you hear anything about the telepathy tapes that we were?
No, sorry.
Okay.
I just jumped right on. I saw Fleabus. I saw this cast of characters, these four, and I'm like, there's no way I'm not jumping on.
Okay. So I've got a totally vain question. What is it? Narcissistic sociopathy? I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've kind of been tweeting about this a lot, and I put out 2 Substacks on this. I feel like I talk about it too much. Is it just possible that you do? So again, narcissistic question. Neil, do you follow me on Twitter?
No, I actually got off of Twitter in 2020 permanently. Yeah.
Okay, that's
so I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, so it's good to know, because I'm sitting here thinking like, God, Kale, you're just like, you're like one trick pony. You keep tweeting about the telepathy tapes, but clearly not.
Well, here's the thing,
no,
Kale.
I haven't heard about it. I'll go back and I'll listen. Don't repeat everything you already talked
about.
No, that's all right.
Most of the corner is not on X.
For real.
Like, and that's most of the, like,
I did not know
even
that.
the small amount of the corner that is like visible and extroverted online.
Yeah,
you can say. Tayo, go to bed or good morning.
Yeah, right. So
Too true.
wow. So for real, like that's so a lot of people in TLC are not on Twitter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't know how big of a deal you are over there, man.
What no, Kale, actually, what I realized is that like I've been searching for small group community for like 3 years, but I've only realized that in the past like 3-4 months that TLC is like the natural result of me actually searching for productive community.
Yeah.
You know.
Can I ask my selfish question now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, please.
Phoebus, is your turn.
So Kale, since we
Yeah.
have you and we were talking about Catholics,
Yeah.
what is Notre Dame? How am I supposed to think about this thing? So it's not really a church because it doesn't have a congregation, right? Or maybe it does. Maybe it has 100 people. I'm not sure.
And
And
part of it I don't like.
I'll get you.
And like, is it Christian nationalism? From what I understand, the state of France, who is not exactly friendly to religion,
No.
owns all the Catholic churches. So this is more like a museum, and these things don't get built without state power, right? These are, I love cathedrals. Okay, I've been to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Phoebus, you
It's
gotta love
amazing.
the sinner and hate the state.
But it's really a monument to like a state religion or a religious state or something like that. Well, how are we supposed to think about it in the modern times? Like, it's rebuilt, I think, with Disney and L'Oreal money, and it's rebuilt by, I assume, a museum commission or whatever you want to call it.
Parable of the dishonest steward.
And then like some Catholic priests show up and they're like, okay, now we're going to consecrate this place and do the first mass and whatever. But who are they serving? And it's just full of tourists all day, most, from China. And so I don't even know how am I supposed to think about this building?
Yeah. So a lot of, okay. So a couple things. So the ownership question is an interesting one. It's considered, so you have to go back to the French Revolution, right?
Yeah.
So in one of the phases of the French Revolution, of course, everything is seized. Loads of, I don't know, people don't really know too much about this in this regard. Loads of priests and nuns are martyred. Like loads of whole convents and monasteries are liquidated, and all the churches are seized. And so it really becomes, it's the first instantiation of the sort of the modern secular state, right? And so, and at one point, but Notre Dame always enjoyed a kind of position. If you've been there, it's like right in the middle of the Isle of
right
the river
where it
there.
should be.
Right, it's right in the heart, right, of the Seine, right, and it's always been a kind of symbol of Paris and therefore France, and of course up until 1789, that was it was very Catholic, et cetera, right. We have 2 McMoes now, which is exciting. So it was seized, of course, in the middle of the Revolution. It was turned into the Temple of Reason. It was all kinds of stuff, right, and in part, it gets sort of given back to the church when Napoleon uses it as his stage with which to crown himself emperor of France, right? And so, anyway, it's a long, complicated
Can I
history.
insert one?
Yeah.
One other history thing interesting that I read was post Vatican II. It was the clergy that went all iconoclastic and were ripping out all the altar rails, etc.
Yeah.
And it was actually the state who was intervening to preserve these historical pieces.
Yeah.
And now we get the flip where people are mad at what's being put in. Anyways, go on.
Yeah, only people like me are mad about that weird altar. To be fair. So right, and I think you're correct to invoke the Second Vatican Council and the fit of iconoclasm that followed it. So that those are all real things. But they're like, if you go there on Saturday, they will have, it's part of the diocese or the Archdiocese of Paris, right? Yes, it's one of these sort of public-private partnerships in terms of funding, so that it's not, it's not like, whereas if you go to St. Peter's, for instance, it's owned by Vatican City, it's owned by the church, right? And so, but in some of these countries, it's a much more complicated relationship. But there's still, like, you go to mass on Sunday, so it's a functioning church in the Diocese of Paris. Okay, so yes, there's probably a local congregation that shows up. There's probably, I don't know, 50 people who show up on a, but then like loads of tourists who will come. Like when I was there many years ago, I went to mass. It's probably a weekday mass, but I went to weekday mass there, early on. So it's not just a museum, right? And in fact, one of the great concerns that people have about St. Peter's and all the churches of Rome, one of the big concerns is because you have a shrinking population that actually, goes to mass, supports tithes, does all that sort of thing. They're really worried about, well, how are we going to, maintain these buildings? And in part that, you're going to see, I think, in our lifetime, maybe even very, very soon, they're going to start charging for you to enter these churches. You go to Rome today, you can go to every church basically for free, right? And it's amazing. If you've ever been, you don't have to be Catholic to be blown away by it. It is just a stunning experience.
Yeah.
Right?
No, totally. Yeah.
And so I think that the rebuilding of Notre Dame is interesting to me because, if this would have happened 15 years ago, I'm not so sure they would have done it. And I think if they had redone it, they would have done one of those weird, like, glass, add-ons like you see at all these weird buildings. So it is an interesting moment in which they made a decision, except for that weird little half egg shaped altar in the middle of the nave there. They basically went trad on it. They basically redid it as if they were kind of rebuilding a 69 Mustang. It's like they did it back to factory.
Very cool. Yeah, I still don't know what I think about it.
Of course, because all of us are uncomfortable with this question about church and state, right?
Yeah. And the comment to Italy too. All these people, as the Orthodox and whatever, that are so excited about aesthetics and having these beautiful buildings. It's not doing it in Italy. So
yeah, and nowhere in Europe. It's
the Gen X. It's the Gen X urge to resto mod.
That's interesting. Yeah, no,
we want.
I have that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
we want. I say y'all want the Mustang, but you want the flat screen TV in it, right. And if it self drives, all the better, and we'll get the emission ratings.
Yeah, one of the things that I was listening to a Rogan podcast one time, and he was talking about it. As soon as he gets one of his like retro cars, he immediately has the insides ripped out, the brake systems ripped out, the steering ripped out, and modernized. So he's driving around.
He loves that icon guy. Yeah.
There's that conflict between authenticity and sincerity between every single one of us.
Right. That's right. That's exactly right. That's really good. But to your point, Philippe, I think you're right. I think that it's really cute and nice when you hear somebody like me say, "Oh, well, beauty will save the world." But it's like, okay, but man, like, they got some pretty stuff there. It doesn't look like the kids are not flocking to church on Sundays, even with those beautiful basilicas and whatnot. So no, I think that's a good point. And I do think it's a little bit of American Protestant Orthodox, but I repeat myself, movement online. Like, I really, and again, and I am not a hyper denominationalist guy. Like, that's just not my thing. But I do laugh a lot at my friends with the whole Orthodox thing, because somebody in the corner said it one time, and I thought it was really great. It's just a new version of being an American Protestant for many people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the guys who are successful online are actually all born Protestants. There's no cradle Orthodox who's making the big splash. They're almost without exception born Methodist or something.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, the Amish population has quadrupled in the last 50 years, or something like that.
They don't have birth control.
Well,
Also,
It's over
easy-
for them, Neil. It's
easy
over.
to
They
it's easy to quadruple when there's only like 16 of you.
I don't think you guys realize how crazy it is that they voted, and
Yeah,
how
no,
that probably
that's huge.
that actually kind of signals the end for them, unfortunately, because their
They're the
whole
ants.
thing is not being involved. The state abuses them. They do not prop up the state, and by choosing to actually participate, that is going to break some of them apart. The ones who are actually worried about it have already left the states. They've gone to like Paraguay.
Wow.
They're starting new colonies. They go to Mexico,
they're
where
the
there's
ants,
less intervention.
Like they are the ints. They had their int moot, and they decided to sacrifice it all to take down Isengard, and only a couple of them will survive, and they will have to watch after the forests.
This is really interesting to me. I didn't know all this. It'll be
Well-
interesting to see in the coming years.
Neil, what
Yeah,
have
my
you been
wife-
doing, dude? You gotta
No,
stop
I knew-
developing
I knew
video games and read Twitter and get obsessed with politics and see everything that's
live
going
in
on, dude.
I live in a nice isolated bubble with all of you fine fellows.
Yeah, so my wife is an Anabaptist, and I live in an area with a lot of Mennonites and a lot of Amish, and they're going through a real revolution where a lot of them live traditionally, but they've made these funny rules where with businesses they can participate with technology. So they'll have no electricity in the house, and they'll be pumping out car parts in the barn with like robots and whatever. But the voting thing is huge. The voting thing is like their saints are all conscientious objectors and whatever. And by voting, I know everybody thought this was cool and wow, they had the Amish vote, but it directly violates how much they participate in society. And now they are actually partially responsible for what happens because they hitched their wagon to Trump.
Yep.
Even though I'm not going to accuse them of that or whatever, but it totally violates how they operate. And
and I was telling this to my wife because we passed a advertise like a highway billboard on I-95 or I-26 that was basically like Amish furniture, and they had a picture of a nice Amish person just sitting there with the furniture, and my wife was like, how do they justify that? That basically like someone took a photo of this person, and I was like, oh yeah, they don't have any problem for the most part as far as I'm concerned, like paying other people to use technology.
Yeah.
You
Really,
wouldn't hear about
God.
the farmer. I'm sure you can pay with a debit card at the farmer's furniture place.
It really sounds to me like the ultra orthodox thing in Jewish communities. It's so interesting.
Well,
But
so
the other thing is, because they're not a part of technology, and because they're not taking the vaccines, and they don't have the cell phones by their waistlines, they don't
they
get
do.
these autistic kids who are nonverbal. So they're not meeting on the hill to talk about the seventh heaven or whatever it is. But like the other thing that's interesting, and I wanted to circle back to Neil about the parable piece, because you actually brought that back again with Notre Dame. But it was interesting to me that so these kids that are telepathic, and they're kind of like speaking of spiritual things to one another telepathically and talking to and about God and angels. Not one of them seemed to have any type of political inclination whatsoever. And in fact, when they mentioned the things that politically they were interested in, and maybe this is just because it was kind of somewhat NPR coded, but they talked about climate change as one of the things that they were kind of concerned with, and along a list of other things that were kind of, maybe more right-wing coded or something, or, because they all talk about, too, the lack of love, in a sense. It did that Christian thing where it was, like, more lovey-dovey than hippies and, like, more accusatory than the most legalist among you. Because, like, and what made me realize this, too, was that one of the kids says, you can't use telepathy if you lie.
Yeah.
You don't get these gifts if you lie. And we all lie. But Neil, talk about the.
Well, how do you lie without language, McMo?
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, like how do you?
So
don't think you can.
basketball,
we can say
this
we
is
can
how
say
you
you
do it
can
in a
live a
basketball
lie.
court.
Yeah.
Well, how you, I think, I mean, if you look at Adam before he sins, before he lies, he's naming the animals, so you can actually use language to name the animals. That is to say, you can use language to obey God, that there is the function of obedience, which allows everything we're able to do is we're able to do it for the purposes of obedience. So that would be my quick answer to, like, it's not that like all language is lies. It's more that language in a fallen sense, the best, probably, like, the best practices is something like a Wittgensteinian, like, of that which nothing can be said, I shall remain silent, kind of a thing. But Neil, please, the floor is yours.
Oh, about parable of the dishonest steward. Yeah, I mean, something I've gotten from not only Peterson but Steven Pinker, to be honest, is we live in such a material abundant time. So one thing I've noticed is that the more material abundance we have, the more resentful we are, which is the exact opposite of what you would anticipate rational beings to be, right? So like the more you have, more choices, the more options, and so then the more resentful we get. And then it's like, okay, so we have all this stuff. So if we have all this stuff, and I mean stuff in just the broadest possible sense. I mean it not only in terms of stuff, but opportunities for attention, for time, for everything, where we have more options than ever before. That to me is being trusted, let's say, with the stewardship of God's kingdom, you could say. And then the question is, like, are we stewarding that honestly? And both personally and sociologically, obviously the answer is no. But the question is, okay, are we? Because something I've felt, I don't know why it is, it's like, okay, modernity is coming to an end. I don't know where we're going to be in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. I have no idea. But I do know that the one thing I'll still care about that's a good thing is friendship, is community, as people I genuinely care about and who care about me. And so I feel like with what we're doing in TLC, with technology more generally, like my love of games growing up, all of that, I feel like this dishonest steward that's saying, like, okay, all this mammon stuff, like I'm going to use the gifts that I have to make friends. And like I said this on the live stream last night, is that, like, I can't, the Petersonian pull yourself up by the bootstraps, I can't save myself. I can't do it. Obviously by the grace of God, he can save me. But maybe the people who I care about and care about me have a hand in saving what I care about. And I don't know. So that's how I think about the parable. It's like, if you read the crucifixion of Christ as like, you are the person doing the crucifying, and we always read that it's the same thing with this parable. It's like, we are the dishonest stewards. Now, obviously, some of us to a greater extent than others, because we are not using properly the time, attention, all the things we are gifted. But while we're in this world, it's like, yeah, we can use them to some good, but the one thing I'm sure about is that friendship and caring about your friends and supporting your friends is good. And there's very few things that I'm absolutely sure of.
Yeah, well,
go ahead.
That's teleological, right? I mean, we if you look at Scripture, that's exactly what the communion of saints is. It's communion of friendship, right? And if Lewis is correct, that friendship is properly understood as two people looking at the same thing and appreciating and admiring and worshiping the same thing, that's what friendship is. And I think what we experience here in TLC in our various versions of it, it's a bunch of us trying to look at the same thing, not in the same way, right? I think that's a crucial distinction, maybe, and I think one of the reasons, Paul was going off this morning on the whole T-Grog phenomenon, And I think I'm definitely one of those ones who gets really annoyed by him. And he's also on Twitter, and he comes at me on Twitter, which is fine. I mean, like, whatever, it is what it is.
Of course he is.
Yeah, but what frustrates me about that, like, if we're on a Friday live stream and PVK is doing his thing and is inviting people in, and like I have such a good time in the comments, it's one of my favorite things to do, just to mix it up with everybody, and make jokes and comment and riff and all this sort of stuff. And all of a sudden, you've got this guy who's like dropping turds. It's like, just stop. Like, like, this is not friendship. And so for I see the TLC like you, Neil, I think, which is, it's friendship coded, right? It's an anticipation, right? Our friendships anticipate, for me, they anticipate the heavenly banquet, that we're all, together singing Sanctus, 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 and so I agree. I think I take that stuff very seriously.
PVK made us admins, Kale, and I think we just have to wield our power.
I did last time. I haven't been on.
I've done it before too.
Yeah, the last 2 weeks I've not been able to show up for Friday for church. But the last time he was being an idiot. I just timed him out. It was just like, stop. It's not.
I had the same complaint years ago when we had the Claire Koss stuff. It dominated the chat, and there's these different levels of the TLC. And if you're only participating in the chat, it ruins the whole thing.
Yeah.
Jonathan Demir is here. Upcycle is here. Tayo says he's jumping on.
Look at this.
Haven't seen him down here yet. I'm cooking up a beat. The stars are aligning, folks. This has turned out to be the best Sunday chill stream ever.
But Neil, to your point, like, there's one thing you're sure of. I agree. 100. Absolutely. And so we should talk more seriously about friendship, right? But I think it's also, for some reason, when you were talking, I was also thinking of the Desert Fathers, right? And you talk, I said that, what I said earlier, that Mammon won. I think if you look at the past, right? What did serious, Christians do? Like, well, in part, there's this recognition that you need to retreat from the noise, right? So you look at somebody like Saint Benedict. What's up, Tayo? You look at somebody like Saint Benedict, right? Saint Benedict retreats from the noise of Rome because Rome is a cesspit, right? It's corrupt, it's disgusting, it's gross, it's all these sorts of things. And so he literally pulls himself out of elite circles that he was supposed to be in. Like, he really checks out. And then what happens, though, is that because of his radical witness and his listening to the, with the ear of the heart and all that sort of stuff, he gathers around him like-minded dudes who want to do this thing. They want to live. And so it starts in that. So the monastery, the model of a monastery, and you don't have to get very technical if you don't want to, but the model of the monastery is it's supposed to be an ordered friendship. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
The virtual monastery of TLC.
Yeah.
We're waiting for the boss to talk. He just showed up.
Yeah.
Big man Tayo, welcome.
Walk on, brother. Walk on. First of all, can Noah say something? Because I've been watching for like 20 minutes and he's not said a word.
I'm just chilling, listening. If I had to say anything, it reminds me, monastery talk reminds me of I don't know if anybody's familiar with SQLite. It's like a database software. It's open source. It's used everywhere. It's really nice. But I stumbled across their code of ethics, which used to be called their code of conduct before they changed it because people have a certain idea of what a code of conduct looks like. And they just copy and pasted the rule of St. Benedict into their code of ethics. And so it's really funny to see that in this like software that's used everywhere.
That's so funny.
But yeah, it's there. There's a certain level of like all men are just desiring to go into the monastery secretly. It's the goal is to have that brotherhood, whether you live with them or not.
See, I'm drawing from my fraternity experience all the time in TLC,
right?
All the time. Mm-hmm. So the way TLC people smuggle in, TLC stuff into their Bible studies. I'm doing that too, by the way. But the way TLC smuggles stuff into their Christian communities, I'm smuggling fraternity stuff into TLC. So
Okay, I'm trying not to be a party pooper. I really am.
No, give us your take. We don't know what to do.
fire at will, Commander.
I also do empathize and agree with what both you, Neil, and Kel are saying about the friendship mode of engagement being my favorite mode of engagement in this space. But
Well,
this is the
it's your lucky day, Tayo. You could try to poop on this party, but I'm trying to turn this shit up. So let's see whose will is stronger. Come on, brother. Everybody's trying to be nice to T-Grog. I'm trying to fight.
McMo's on a passion streak. You should have seen him
let's
last night.
Let's do it. You know what? Okay, so boom. If this is meant to be the monastery the way it's being described, and I don't, then this is a community in the way communities are, in the fact that there's something binding us together, and we're saying that thing is friendship. Then there'll only be as many there'll be as many communities as there are Dunbar numbers. So there are fractures of communities of friends, because if it's friends we're looking for, you probably get 3 or 4 that you really connect with, and those that you can call friends, and then your relationship with others will be dependent on how much their network's connected to your friendship network.
Well, I think we can't confuse the telos with the totality, right? Like, PVK has best friends, I'm assuming. You know, he's married to his wife. I'm assuming that, you know, none of us come before his wife, right? And so when I hear Neil talk about finding friends, you know, and Kale mentioning that is a telos, you know, of a sort. That's like that. This is the thing that's kind of bothered me about the telos talk, is that we turn even telos into an idol, in that it becomes all encompassing. That like the arsunum bonum telos is, you know, one thing, and it's understandable, and we can put it in a few sentences, and maybe we can call that a creed or a confession, and then maybe we can kill people who don't share it. You know, like that's to me that's the kind of where that goes in terms of like you know, a community and it being fixed by a Dunbar number. You know, I wouldn't be too, you know, who the hell is Dunbar, and why does he get to decide how many friends I have? You know, maybe I've been given the spiritual gift of friendship, and I can be friends with the next guy I meet on a live stream. You know, maybe I have that gift. And it's funny because I was going to actually call you, Tayo, tonight or tomorrow, because you appeared in my dream today. Last night, yeah, and you appeared in my dream with one of my best friends, and because we've been talking about woo, I feel confident and comfortable sharing. You in my dream, so a lot of times in my dreams, I talked about this earlier too, I will be at a dreamlike version of Tybee Island, and it'll be the beach at night, and the waves will be massive, and sometimes my dream happens on the beach, sometimes it revolves around what's going on in the ocean. Regardless, my childhood best friend and you, Tayo, were both lifeguards on Sea-Doos in these giant waves on the beach. And you guys were kind of dutifully doing your job protecting those who venture too far out in waves that they shouldn't be trying to surf. And so I thought I'd tell you that because as a means of encouragement. But then also I think that like your point here I don't think is I mean, I said it, that was the first thing I said. I think that we often confuse telos with the totality. And so that, you know, what we're trying to do and what we're called to do are often very, very different. So that Neil can have the telos of trying to make a couple of good friends and then wind up making some very interesting content on evolution, even though I disagree with much of it.
First of all, you know it's a dream because you've got a black man being in charge as a lifeguard. That's hilarious to me. Second of all, I'm not even mad. I'm not mad at the friendship tailors, but the reason I jumped on was because I saw the friendship tailors being weaponized against T-Grog. That's what I was hearing.
Yeah,
Was
I was busy making a beat. I let my load go. Oh, see you, Kale. Thanks for jumping on.
No. I want to jump
He
in.
wants to
Oh,
talk.
you go
He
then. You go.
wants
Sorry,
to
I thought you were waving
defend.
by.
No, I am on a clock here, but it's okay. So I think Ty, one of the reasons why I get annoyed during the live streams when T-Grog is trolling, is precisely because like I'm fine, like whatever, man. I've spent so much time with new atheist types. Like I'm not like it's not about me. I don't like the spirit that it allows to allows to pervade in the kind of like the whole experience. Like I do not expect like everybody who's on a PVK live stream to be like saluting PVK. Yes, I agree with that, and yes, I agree with that, and yes. But rather there's a sort of a spirit of attention that should be generous, and it should be generous, and I find it to be ungenerous, and I worry about those people who are like really vulnerable to those kinds of things, because I have seen a lot of folks sort of go through the PVK thing and get opened up in good ways that they might not otherwise get opened up. So that's really where I'm coming from with the T-Grog thing.
yeah, I think I really like one of PVK's latest videos that I made about that, because that's often what I find most interesting about Tagrug is the reaction that he
Yes.
brings
Yeah.
up both in myself, and then I watch that reaction in myself manifest itself other people through the hive mind. And I think that's useful information for me in my spiritual journey about the things that still get under my skin, the pettiness that I can get dragged into. And he's an expert I think he's an expert level troll in his effectiveness.
Level 10. Fight.
Well, yeah, no, I think that's probably right, but
No. Sorry. No, T-Grog is not an excellent troll. No, he is not. He could be a much better troll. He actually besmirches the good name of trolls everywhere. He's not a troll. He
Like it would be
is.
more like he's possessed by
He's
a
an
spirit.
asshole.
All right,
An
yes.
asshole.
No, Neil. No,
an
Neil.
inhuman asshole.
You get put on mute for that. You get put on mute for that. This is my stream. I'm in
was worth
charge.
it.
You guys have given the reins to an absurdist, so good
I
luck.
love
I
it,
want
I love it.
Jonathan Demir finally spoke up from his hermitage in the Northeast. Please, Jonathan, give us your 2 cents.
I liked what Kale's saying, but I think that the key distinction is that it's the spirit and not the person, right? Such that it would be that Tigrog, I forget what the last thing it said, but that basically it would be that he's possessed of some sort.
Well, PVK made a good point this morning. He was talking about the sort of the T-Grog, in the comments versus the T-Grog. With Tim is his name, I think. The Tim that he knows, and I appreciate that distinction. I think that's real. I certainly find myself behaving in different ways depending upon the platform, and trying to be conscious of that is something I have to be conscious of, right? But I think. I just don't like I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I have a sort of a sensitivity to meanness that I don't care for.
Well, he likes the spirit, and he likes that it possesses him. So he likes being off camera and channeling it. That's what PVK was saying. And then the worry is that he actually has more stamina than we do. So, yeah. Oh, no.
Nope.
All right.
He does not have
Mo.
more stamina than me. His will is not stronger than mine.
Well,
He
thrives
the
on
autistic
adversarial
father I
attention.
never got to argue with. My dad made all the right decisions at the whole atheist theism debate, and so I never got to really have it out with him the way I would have wanted as an edgy teenager. And so T-Grog is perfect fodder for me to unleash all of my anger and vitriol towards materialism, new atheism, and the like, because he's not. I think Tim is much like I liked how PVK separated Tim and T-Grog. T-Grog is not a good troll. He's not a good new atheist. The spirit of T-Grog is a boomer who is addicted to the dopamine of 2008.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you could argue, McMo, that the greatest troll in the corner is somebody like John Vervaeke, and I don't say that I love John, but just to be clear, like if you want somebody who's really challenging, like throw Vervaeke in there, and like what gives, brother? Like what gives?
Yeah,
that's a troll.
The real troll is Paul Vanderklay. I think that's the secret, is that he's the one who makes everybody think he's not a troll, but he secretly is. He's so always throwing shoes into the gears and everything.
There's a reason why he still has not clipped Luke's channel of Luke speaking after everyone and their mom noticed that he did.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Even I got a clip.
PVK clipped Dumir before Luke. PVK was more comfortable exposing people to the Archons and
I'm just joking. I totally love PVK.
And the Black Cube before he was comfortable.
Black Cube.
That's so funny. That is so funny. Yeah, I think that I'm kind of not impressed with the level of T-Grog's arguments. I get more upset that we're kind of like, I guess I feel like the autistic kids who can do telepathy being shown the shapes and the circles again. I'm like,
he's a very good large language model. He's
do
a
we
very
really
good
have
large.
to go back and
Look, that's not
it's not fair. It's not nice.
I got
guys. I'm not saying it's not.
Cheers.
Forget nice. I don't think that's right. He's too effective for him to be just a large language model. Even if he's just that, I'm speaking to the effectiveness of the way the hive mind reacts to him, the way I react to him, the way I feel to get dragged down into his level and start to play the polemics game. And there's TLC do not react well to polemics. They like TLC really don't. And even when Tiggrog is making good arguments, like good, astute, trollish, but it's good arguments. For example, when PVK is answering a question and going round and round and round about, he's not wrong to point that out. But because he's not doing it in the way that's friendly, and he's not really a friend of anyone. That's the point I was making about the friendship thing. Because he's not a friend of anyone in the corner, really. Then he's automatically a troll because he's outside of the community. He's someone that's like a gargoyle at the edge of the town. Of this is what not to. This is how not to behave. Otherwise, you'll get reacted to the way the hive mind reactor. And I don't think it's about the content of his argument or the how high level his argument is. I think it's the delivery, and also the he's always just playing his own game, regardless of what's going on.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point, Tayo. And it makes me realize that like what he is doing is he is triggering a whole lot of people for a whole lot of different reasons, which is interesting. Like that is interesting. And I think, there is a bit of like it is kind of like the inverse of the conservative the conservative dad at Thanksgiving that like all of my liberal friends have to deal with, where it's like, can you believe my dad voted for Trump? Blah, 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 blah. Like it's like we've got, can you believe T-Grog still thinks that?
That's a good comp. Exactly. That's a very good comp.
And so like I do see you on that. I also do think that though there is room, it's like I see T-Grog catching a lot of heat, but I honestly do think that like there's a sense in which he's unwilling to have certain types of conversations. And so it is also hitting on that thing of like, who gets to tell everybody what type of conversations happen in the free and open internet, like you were saying earlier.
It's like everyone gets to use their best argument against him. It's like, Tigog, really? Like, what about consciousness? You know, how do you account for that? And then he totally ignores it. He doesn't care. He doesn't give it the time of day. So you just used like your thing that broke you 20 years ago, and he's like, whatever, you guys are stupid, and then it just drives everyone up at the wall. So
You're not an expert's expert.
Well, the feeling is when I was younger, there was music I found that just like blew my mind. I was like, oh man, this is like really cool to see this alternative rock band sing about Christianity or something like that. Like that just was like really cool to me. And then I would share it with my parents, and they would be like, this singer is really whiny. And it's like, oh, okay, well, you just kind of just threw it out. I can't have this conversation with you anymore. And that's just
yeah. Well, maybe we should.
Phoebus, you're muted, by the way.
Oh, it's the
Maybe
same.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, some people have also gone the moral route. It's like, hey, Tim, where do you get morals, and where's the basis for that? And he's just like, it's self-evident. You guys are idiots, and on to the next thing. And I think that's what drives everyone up the wall, because we have had those breakthroughs, and we're like, some people think, oh, we can really get him with this, or, you know, we're going to shed some light on this, and he's not interested in the light.
Yeah, that's why I feel a little justified in just unleashing, just pure mockery most of the time. Like my two responses to Tigog are basically ignore him and mock him, which is not Christ-like, and I should probably repent of that. But some of the jokes I come up with are just too good not to post, So I just, it's hard. It's hard for a player out there, And I don't like, Paul mentioned my type of person. I don't know if he was talking about me, but I know that he purposely didn't say the name so that multiple people would think he was talking about him.
Yeah, everyone wanted it to be in their heart.
Right,
they're like,
right.
I hope it's me.
But no, I knew that Paul doesn't really consider me a troll, but I consider myself a troll, and I just want to see the overall quality of trolls go up. I'd like to take a little bit of credit for Yon God's level of trolling elevating to the moment, and he has become a delight and a real asset to the community. Tigog is still, at the beginning stages of his journey of being a true and good troll. But, these things take time. We can't expect Tigog to be the perfect troll. It's kind of like sanctification. It takes a long time of obedience in a single direction to reach quality troll status.
The right bottom-up solution is boredom. So that's the bottom-up solution. Now, the top-down solution is somewhat like PVK and admins, but we just get bored.
I don't think of it as a problem.
I think it's like the spirit in which you do the trolling, right? And like as Phoebus was saying, it's like he likes the spirit which is perhaps not preferable, and to the TLC vibe. So like it's like, how do we convince him, perhaps, or exemplify for him that there are ways to be a troll in a more friendly troll, or something like that. If he's insistent on being a troll, which is kind of understandable, to be honest. Like because Kel was saying, even Vervaeke could be conceived of as like a high level troll or something. Trolling the more traditional way of doing things.
Yeah, I wanted Kale to expand on that. I was interested with that.
Yeah, I don't. Well, since it's not, in which way do you guys think he thought Vervaeke was a troll?
Well, my first thought was the way he steals all these terms and applies them to his system, like taking Advent, and I don't know. He does that a lot. Where on his next thing,
the one that comes to mind for me is the Hermes thing. But I think it's like that's the thing, is that the spirit of Vervaeke's trolling is good. It's like he wants a productive conversation ultimately. So when he goes and is like, guess what, y'all? Now you have to deal with Hermes. He knows that's kind of trolling, but it's also he thinks that that'll be a productive thing, and I can understand that.
There's two things. There's the effect on people, and there's what Vervaeke intends. And what Vervaeke's intent is not to irritate, annoy, bother other people. I think Tim deep down really hopes in, let's say, a good and loving God. I think deep down he hopes for that, but he can only aim for that by pushing up against those that he think might offer the best possible hope. And a community like the TLC is probably the best bet for somebody who has exhausted all the propositional knowing of Christianity. That's how he feels. Like he's exhausted all the propositional knowing, and he's been left wanting. He doesn't have faith. I can't fault him for that, and so I can only conclude that. And I think he's a genuine good person, but I think it's two things. I think he does enjoy the attention, but the second thing is I think he's actually hoping for a reason to believe. I think that's what brings him into TLC is specifically versus any other setting where they would just throw him out.
Yeah. Well, I think I said this last night when I, ripped into atheism, but I do really think that there's a real sense in that, like, he does not know who he's talking to yet. He still sees us as, you can hear the wonderment in his voice when he's like, I think you're very smart people, but also I think that everything you think is stupid and false and easily understandable as such. But the mind is not a reliable thing, folks. You've been lied to, folks. I think that he does not understand. Well, and maybe this has something to do with the autism, but, he has yet to correctly read the room, in my opinion. And I don't mean that in the, like, he's missing social cues like all people with autism do. I mean that he thinks that he's with a bunch of misguided and chaotic, sentimental folk, when that's not the community that he's found himself in. And people have tried to tell him this, and the message has not gotten through, or at least it hasn't gotten through in a way in which he's changed the ways in which he interacts with the group after learning that information. And so, like, to me, I'm not trying to see T-Grog's heart change. I'm not trying to manipulate him into becoming a Christian, or, I'm not even that upset with how he, like, presents his ideas. I think that the thing that I already explained probably the psychological stuff that's going on for me when I interact with T-Grog, but yeah, like, I think that if he's done anything wrong, it's kind of that failure to intake what's actually going on and to actually interact with the real conversation that's happening, right? Like, there does seem to be a sense in which no matter what we're talking about, he wants to talk about what he wants to talk about, and that's fine to do, but, like, I don't have to, like, that doesn't dictate me, not trolling you after that, because you just said the same thing you said in the last stream. And
I'd like Jonathan or Noah to throw a topic on the table.
Yeah, let's talk about.
Neil,
actually, I'm going to mute you for that, even though you're right. I'm going to mute you for that. Just you muted yourself, but I'm going to mute you for that because this is still my stream. This is not the Friday.
Oh, I didn't know if there was like a double secret mute that, like, even though it appeared to me that I'm not muted, that you actually muted me, so I'm talking to myself.
Yeah, I just mute you for myself so I can't hear you. No, Neil, you're right. Let's hear from Jonathan. And
you shadow ban me, and nobody.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I like the I don't know. There was good stuff being said, about friendship and stuff. Always love to hear that. The importance of Christian fellowship and philia, agape, communion. But also part of the reason I joined was because I saw Tayo ask in the comments, is anybody in TLC worried about climate change? I just wanted to say I am.
Thank you, Jonathan. Me too.
I'm not because Jesus actually commanded us not to worry.
Fair enough.
So checkmate. I'm more holy than both of you guys, and God loves me more. Proceed with the rest of the conversation.
Well
Fair
played,
enough.
sir.
I'm not really worried because I don't think there is much we can do without being forced to do it. So something will have to go badly, and then we as a race will have to respond. I don't think we can proactively respond. It's beyond our abilities.
Well,
I'm more so worried
no.
about I'm more so worried about like possibility of like sudden events like solar flare or something. Or like an asteroid. I know that's kind of whack, but
Dude, get better worries.
it's not really that I'm worried. It's just like I feel like there do be a lot of whistling past the graveyard. It's like if your house was on fire, and you don't want to worry about it, but you should like at least like notice.
Yeah. What do we mean by worry?
No, but you're asking us to worry about our house being struck by lightning at some point in the future. The house isn't on fire yet with those scenarios, right?
Well, but it's kind of all like, do we trust the scientists with regard to like the changes on the sun and like the cycles and such like this?
Do we trust the scientists?
I mean, you can also observe it with your own like eyes. Like if you go to the Inuit people in the north, they say like the pole has moved.
Do you trust the experts or do you trust the Inuits?
I kind of trust them both to a certain extent. I don't know.
Well, one interesting thing that I've noticed is there's a podcast I'll tune in for every once in a while called the Horseshoe Theory Podcast. And what they do is they bring on just like mostly young people and they're really on political extremes of every direction. So they'll basically just show off some random person who's gotten popular for being an e-girl and a Hegelian at the same time, or like an eco-fascist or something. And every single one of them, no matter like what their beliefs on anything are, like opposite beliefs on immigration or whatever, because they're young people, they all care about the environment. Like climate change is always like on the top 3 of everything they talk about. So it's a very generational, like a big generational gap.
Yeah, because there's been a lot of fear mongering.
Well, I think it's mostly about it's a universally positive social signal. Like there's no one who thinks that there should be less nature, like that nature should die or something.
Because we are nature.
Like,
the only people who think that are people
you saying
who are
that makes me want to
yeah.
take a. I guess I'm in full devil's advocate mode tonight because I'm like, do I need nature in New Jerusalem? Or is it?
Nature is at the center of New Jerusalem.
I'd say
Unreal Engine. Yeah, Unreal Engine has free nature assets till the end of the year, and then after that they disappear. So
yeah, the world has free nature assets till the end of time.
But the thing is, like, nature is not quite it, because I know of transhumanists who say that the future is not in nature. It's in the effect that nature has on you and the environment. And if we can replicate it, it doesn't matter. It's about the ends. It seems to be more about the apocalypse, the day of the Lord that will come with climate change. That seems to be more of the attitude.
I think it's like it is the kind of clearest and easiest ethical position to take right now. I just talked to a friend down in Savannah who asked about Hurricane Helene, and God bless her, she's one of the sweetest human beings on earth, but she is not necessarily who I would go to for questions of great importance. But she basically, the first thing that she said was, the first thing I thought of was, oh my gosh, climate change is real. And I was like, is that really that was the first thing you thought of? A hurricane barreled through my neighborhood and, people died, and you thought climate change is real, and I think that was something that really kind of struck me, I guess, at the first day where I still had internet, and I could see what people on Twitter were saying. It really was kind of shocking how quick climate change is real was, a trending hashtag. But like, that's not to say that it's not like, I have also felt that kind of like pit in my stomach of like, have we Icarus'd our whole system, And so like, I'm very comfortable to say that like, yes, Mammon is having detrimental effects on our psychological lives, on our spiritual lives, and yes, even on the environment, the nature which we are meant to steward. But I think that the problem is when it's couched in the terms of quote unquote climate change, that becomes a pseudo denomination or a creed or a confession that in order to enter polite society, you must agree that climate change is real. And that, like, they say that climate change is real. Not that climate change is happening, not that climate change,
Yeah, it's like it's a religious belief, essentially. It's like,
that's
do
what
you
it's
believe
become.
in climate change?
The dogma.
Yeah, it's a dogma. And so my own personality or whatever, big 5 traits, causes me to not want to agree with that. But I think that like the world that I would love to live in, if I had my druthers, yeah, we're not pumping chemicals into the air for no reason. We don't have the avarice that leads us to use energy and be wasteful, but I'm also not trying to I don't think the Amish even care about climate change.
They love it up here. So the climate has changed in the past 50 years, that the farmland is actually expanding north, and the Amish buy up all the cheap farmland that used to be unfarmable. And now with the wonders of crop genetics and warming climates, we actually have a growing season. Like, the growing season is moving up. So I definitely see it. I have voted for the Green Party in the past because I don't live in America. We can shift our vote around.
Liberal Phlebas appears.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But Phlebas is far more complicated than
it's because
initial
I'm in
impressions.
Canada. You guys can't chart me on your little this way or this way chart. It's very different up here.
The hilarity and absurdity of the Canadian saying the little anything in reference to America.
But anyways, I just think it's beyond human capacity to organize and take on this global problem. And we are going to have to be Icarus, and we're going to have to fall back to the earth before that. Because all the responses right now is like, let's give everyone an electric car. And that does, okay, that's okay. But also everyone in China is going to have an electric car, and everyone, it actually doesn't decrease anything, I don't think. We have to be forced to give up our material. Oh, and I got to go. See you guys.
Bye, Phlebas. Thanks for joining, man. Really appreciated it.
I'm going to left brain this a little bit. There's a few reasons why I'm not worried.
One is that the shit out of it.
Exactly. That's my thing, right? One is that the world was much warmer on average 65 million years ago at the time of the dinosaurs. And because it was much warmer, it was more fertile. There was a lot more greenery, bigger. In general, more things grow, the warmer the planet gets. I'm sure that has its limit, but historically speaking, we are nowhere close to that limit in terms of things actually growing more as a result. So that's number one. Number two is that humans are the most adaptable species on the planet, except for single-celled and very small organisms. Climate changes slowly. Humans in general are very good at adapting quickly.
Wait, what are you reading here?
Forget not the tardigrade. And Neil's, of course, reading his own personal diary because
no, I'm not reading. Sorry,
I don't know if you're speaking for yourself or not.
I'm speaking for myself. I'm not reading. I'm speaking for myself. Sorry, I'm not reading. I'm just like, I have you guys over on my second monitor, and I apologize. I can look straight at the camera and speak.
This is why in the eye when you're talking to us, boy.
Yeah. Okay. So yes. So humans are the most adaptable species on the planet that we've known. Multicellular life at least. Wait, he's staring deeply into my eyes. The third reason why I'm not worried is that the population decline, the human population decline that's going to happen over the next 30 years to 50 years is going to be a much more disruptive change sociologically.
Is that going to be sampled for a new branding? Because I think that would be
that's a good idea. I might have to take a potty break and make that happen.
Did you get my 3 left brain reasons?
No, yeah, we gotta let Neil. Neil. Can you give us actually the full? Can you restate the three?
I didn't actually mean to like bring this up as a topic, but I just wanted to like respond to Kaya. But I'm not. I don't mean to shut it down, but I just want to say.
I don't mean to shut you down.
Just give us your 3 reasons. Just give us your 3 reasons, Neil.
Okay, number 1, the world's been much warmer than it is now, historically speaking, and it was actually quite good for life. Number 2, humans are extremely adaptable. We can move inland, we can move countries, we can move. It causes wars, it causes problems, but as a species, we're adaptable. Okay, number 3. What's number 3? Oh yeah, like they're bigger fish to fry. Like, we've got bigger issues.
Okay, so these are reasons why you're not worried.
Correct. Like
okay, so wait, I wonder
climate change is going to affect us over 100 years, and the bigger issues that we're dealing with now are going to affect us 20 to 30 years, or even less.
May I respond? Wait, I want to respond, but the thing is that my response is not such that you should be worried, because that would kind of be demonic in a sense or something like that. It's like, I don't want you to worry, but I think there's something about being I don't know, I think there is like a level-headed response perhaps where the thing that I think that maybe it'll get cold first, like if there was a volcano or a solar flare or like a meteor or something that would create like lots of stuff in the atmosphere which would make it cold. And like there's this little clip of Donald Trump, somebody's being like, global warming, and he's like, it's going to get cold first though, you know that, right? And everyone's like, what the fuck does he mean by that? But like there's some people who'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense what he's saying. And then
what was it Biden said? You're in for, it's going to be a cold winter. Something like that. A cold, dark winter.
I think that's like, I don't know. But
it is. It is. He's right.
So I don't know if that's true or not, but anyway, so like I think there's something about the cold as well. But then the adaptable, I'm not trying to make you worry, but I think like some things would be harder to, I think we would have a better time adapting to the post-volcano conditions if we like thought about it prior, and then bigger fish to fry. I also, again, it's not to worry, but I kind of agree with that one.
Well, if your problem, and I agree. Who said it? Talibas said it before he left. Just he doesn't have faith in the ability for humanity to collaborate on such a sufficient scale. I completely agree with that. And so if you're thinking that we even do have the ability to collaborate on a large scale, then and I don't think we have that. But if we did, then you got to think, okay, how do you rank order, prioritize the challenges that we've got?
It could also be at a personal level, though, like acclimating oneself to like less, to be less reliant on like shipping routes and stuff like this. But
yeah, but that's
I'm
happening.
Not worried though. Again,
no, but technology all the time is making things more energy efficient, less expensive, and so what I mean by that is like the ability for people to do more and more work remotely, let's say, so that I'm not gas guzzling into an office all the time, or yeah, like there's countless pieces of technology like that have inevitably reduced the carbon footprint. Double McMo again. Double McMo. Double the pleasure, double the fun with double McMosi.
I'm still listening. I see that Noah has started playing solitaire.
How do you, so you have a virtual camera? You can put it on your virtual camera up to the streamer. Yeah.
But hey,
of course,
I wanted to.
The youngest among us can do that.
I wanted to rebuke both of you in saying, "Oh, ye of little faith." That I do think that humanity can act as one. In one sense, I think it's impossible, but in the other sense, it's like what's impossible with man is possible for God. So
I think it's also in a sense where we're already doing that in a sense.
Yeah, and that was the other thing I was going to mention was the radical, providence of God means that He is working within His personal relationship with every single individual to do exactly what needs to be done. And so, if we don't live at the time of complete agreement, then we don't live at the time of complete agreement, and He's got His reasons for that. But what's more important is that we all are tapped in and tuned in to that, right? Like to that thing that, and this is why we can have kumbaya as various denominations and religious beliefs and political beliefs. It's because if we're certain that God has us right where He wants us, and our desire is to do His will, then what needs to get done will get done, and we don't really need to worry about anything.
It's kind of like not worrying about the events in Revelations, right? It's like they're on the way, or we're in them, but it's not that you should worry. But it's like brimstone or whatever. I don't remember the details. Not to make light of it, but it's like,
I've tried to formulate this as live life like your actions matter, and thank God if they don't.
How long ago did you come up with that? Was this nihilist Noah?
No, a couple days ago.
Are we speaking now tonight? Is this nihilist Noah on this stream?
Did you say it again? What was it? I kind of.
Oh, live life like your actions matter, and thank God if they don't.
Yeah, I would add another thing, which is thank God if they do too.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Thank God.
Jonathan, have you seen the telepathy tapes?
The telepathy takes?
The telepathy. Oh gosh, the telepathy tapes. This is what me and Kale were talking about originally. It's this podcast about people with nonverbal autism who are being shown pretty convincingly to display spiritual gifts such as telepathy. And our boy Rupert makes an appearance in the podcast.
No, I've not seen that. I joined right before Kale started talking about fellowship.
Well, you're going to have to check that out, brother, because it's right up your alley. I was thinking about you the whole time, and I was like, I'm planting seeds, and me and Jonathan shared Morphic Vineyard.
Yeah, no, I'll check that out. To me, yeah. It reminds me of, I tend to think that a lot of times with instances like that it's like these are basically different, like they're just people who encounter reality differently. And then in addition to that, what happens is, it's not, I don't mean to make categorical claims because obviously it's like this broadly defined amorphous, crazy topic. But I mean, I think a lot of these type, people in this ballpark or whatever is that they're just different or they have spiritual gifts or something. And then the societal ostracization kind of pushes them into this totally different place where, we don't even where they have trouble engaging at a human level or something. Yeah. Hey,
welcome, Max.
What's up, fellas?
Hello.
And
Hey there.
I've been listening to the stream on the climate change and now about human agency. So I don't know which way to take it right now. Which way do you want to go? I guess we can. It's all related, but so I guess I'll start with what I was first thinking. With climate change and this apocalypticism, Peter Thiel recently did an interview with the Hoover Institute, and he was saying that we have these two things to navigate. Scylla and Charybdis, the apocalypse and the Antichrist, and he sees that that society talks so much about apocalypse and neglects the one world state kind of antichrist that
Lucifer and Ahriman.
I'm sorry?
Lucifer and Ahriman, it fits perfectly. And also, like, Jonathan Peugeot also talks about this. And, yeah.
Yeah, and that it's actually the constant talk and kind of aggravating, or the constant talk of the apocalypse brings upon the antichrist one world state, because you can say, it's the climate change, we need the one world state with these strong rules that can we can all come together and fix this problem. And
this is also the image of like the whore followed by the beast.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. And another angle to it I never even thought of, what Neil was saying about the population collapse. And it's like, what could possibly be the one world state solution to population collapse? And you can kind of think about some creative ways of
to be clear, that's a temporary thing. I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it, but it's gonna be a thing over the next 20 to 30 years, and then there will be a solution to that. And the reason that there will be a solution to that is because whatever parts of the population continue to keep the population going, those are the parts that'll get larger and larger and larger. So I was mentioning the Amish earlier. If the Amish keep having children, then the Amish become a greater and greater percentage of the whole of whatever part that they are. And the same goes for the ultra-Orthodox Jews in Israel. The same goes in any body. So eventually the population decline problem solves itself, but it's just a matter of reaching whatever equilibrated state, is that it? That causes the population to begin rising again. So
it's also Brave New World too, right? The solution is sorry, I think I have an echo. Is to create your own people. Basically, you genetically make people on purpose less intelligent by exposing them to less oxygen. You create classes of people, and
or
then
fluoride.
And then at that point you just you take away the idea of pregnancy at all, and you just have these tanks that you're creating new people in. So yeah, I mean, there's been plenty of thinking about this for a while. That's an old book too.
Yeah. So before you mentioned the Brave New World thing, which I feel like we could take off in a very generative direction, I did think that, like, you displayed beautifully, Neil, I think both the blessing and the curse of the evolutionary lens, which is if that kind of framing helps you sleep at night, for lack of a more polite way to put it, then it it can be very helpful. But I think that it also is like, because I thought that what you said made very good rational sense, and I could also see it playing out that way. But I think what it leaves out is the type of it leaves out the possibility that we are actually living in the apocalypse.
Sure.
And I think so. There's a real sense in which, and I think Chad said this last night, but it's like the apocalypse is always coming, and so you actually have to have both, right? Like, you have to have the sense in which these are strange. This is a brave new world, and also, we're still not seeing the like dragon being cast into the lake of fire. Like we're not actually seeing that quite yet. It doesn't seem to me. But that pattern is still kind of, echoing from the future, you could say. It's like a reverse echo where it's kind of like I think that we're revving up for it, and it, but yeah, also I didn't get to say thank you very much for joining, Max. Some of that will make it onto the beat that I've been cooking up in the background here. But yes, please continue. And I'm going to get back to this beat. Tayo, you haven't spoken in a while.
I'm going to switch to my phone.
All right. Spooky.
When Peterson talks about pick up the heaviest load you can find and carry it up the mountain or whatever it says, the people in my circle that I see doing that the most are the people that really care about climate change. It's it weighs heavy on them, and they are trying to solve a problem that they believe is a global problem on an individual level, which automatically seems like a foolish task. But when I said I'm quote unquote worried about climate change, it's not really because I'm worried that because I believe the argument, and I'm worried that the end of the world is gonna be by global warming. It's more so there's a lot of energy, especially from young people, like Noah was saying, being pushed in that direction. That's the apocalypse that exists in their worldview, and they've been told they've got the power to change it.
Yeah. So
And
what if they do begin changing it, Tayo? Then what's their eschaton after that? Like, so what I mean by that is like, what if the global temperature starts coming down and they reverse it? Now what?
yeah, that's the point I'm making. It's not about the actual warming or cooling of the planet. It's about an apocalypse exists in all worldview, and that's the apocalypse that they've been given in the world that they live in. And uh, there's a lot of energy being pushed into that direction that's not going to make a difference. They know it's not going to make a difference. And the path I've seen is you go from there to being an anti-natalist. It's a very easy sidestep because you're like, okay, I mean, no one can speak to the nihilism of it all, I'm sure, but it's a very easy move that I've seen a lot of people make to go from the planet is going to end within my lifetime, and I'm not only can't do anything to stop it, everything I'm doing is actively contributing to making it come about faster. That's the that's the narrative they live in, and I'm worried about that. That's what I mean. I'm worried about climate change. It's that narrative, and it's just telling them no, there's nothing to worry about. It's not working. I promise you. Telling them it's the Earth was warmer 1,000 years ago, and it was good for the planet. Straight over there, it's a religion, like we've been saying. There's a worldview in which they live in, and that's the apocalypse that's coming.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to look at, and I don't know if this connection is totally accurate, but to look at early Christianity and to look at the climate change movement, about how St. Paul is talking about how the end of the world is coming soon to a certain amount. He's kind of calling on this apocalyptic vision, that the reason why you need to get your stuff in order is because the day of the Lord is coming, and you have different understandings of what that looks like. You also have people who are acting in a way who might not make a difference with the amount of power they have. Like they're living according to these ideals because they think it's the right thing to do, and then it's people more powerful who see that, who then make a change that actually seems to affect large amounts of people. It's just interesting to see some of those connections.
Peter Thiel said, like, in recent interviews, that like Europe has three visions for itself. One is the kind of communist Chinese, totalitarian state. Second is Sharia law, where women are going to have burqas. And third is the kind of Greta Thunberg, everyone's going to be driving bicycles and stuff. And those are the three visions. There's nothing that reaches a threshold that's enough to carry, a mass of people to, have a vision that's anything else other than that. And it's that's very difficult. Like, what could be another vision?
Well,
yeah, I would say try to, yeah,
Christian
like,
nationalism.
well, the reason that I think that sort of thinking is short-sighted is because could Peter Thiel predict the rise of Trump, for instance, in 2016? What I'm saying is that when a body is faced with poor choices, what tends to emerge is an unexpected choice. And I'm not saying the unexpected choice is good. Like I'm not. So Hitler was completely unexpected as a choice in early 30s Germany, in the Weimar Republic Germany. But because the Weimar Republic was so bad, because inflation was so bad, that unexpected choice emerged. And you know, but I guess what I'm praying for is that the situation in all parts of the world, it doesn't get so bad that really poor radical choices emerge, but that, let's say, I mean, that's what I think TLC is. It's like, okay, we recognize that the right choice is, let's say, repentance towards Christ is the best shot that we've got right now. But how do we make that a slope that's adoptable for the broader world, that does not that's not like a top-down brute force, we're going to solve this now because your situation is so bad.
That fits with what I was just about to say, which is, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Which is that I think maybe just more talk about like local solutions, you know, like, I don't know, I think that we're inclined to think about like how to save the world. And I'm very much inclined in that way. But at the same time, you know, like, I think it's not going to be something that will, I don't know, I think there will be many solutions, and they'll all be kind of like locally, you know, like, because Max was also saying, you know, like something that would address the climatological or like problems for enough people. I think if we consider it in a more local mindset, then it would be that, like, you know, it's kind of like the Amish, honestly. You know, it's like, I think the Amish are base, to be honest, except for some of their beliefs, but just like the way that they conduct themselves in the world, like in terms of, they're just like, y'all are, I don't know.
I'll give you an example.
Things in a lot of ways.
I'll give you an example of like where Demir, what you're saying, works. And an example is the American Civil Rights Movement. In my mind, that's about as good a paradigm shift change that you get within a time frame that you get. Like that, it happened very well in with a minimum of death, you could say, with the civil rights movement. I forget when Rosa Parks on the bus, I think it was the late 50s, early 60s, maybe. So over the course of about 9 years, I think, you've got a predominantly nonviolent movement. I'm not saying that there wasn't violence, and there was, but you have a predominantly nonviolent movement that changes the hearts and minds.
The fact that you don't know the year shows that you're a systemic racist.
Thank you, sir. So now we can move on to the facts. But predominantly nonviolent movement changes the hearts and minds of, let's say, the average American consciousness in a decade, and does that, in a way that's not radically top down, where it's enforced upon people, but actually changes people's minds. And I'm not saying it solves racism overnight or anything like that, but it had a profound shift in the American consciousness. And it only took about 10 years to make that shift. So
we did it, folks. We solved racism.
Well, I think honestly, the internet, Hollywood, these forces have had a bigger effect on changing societal attitudes and beliefs, a little bit even more than the civil rights movement to a certain extent. Because for the most part, right, there's this movement going on, but then there were these closed off communities who had never seen anyone who looked different than them. And then you have the TV enters the space, the theater. You begin seeing people who don't look like you. Like my wife grew up in a small town in Idaho. She had never seen a black person in her life until she was like in person. till she had gone to a field trip to DC. Like it was just, but because she had been exposed to movies and television, like, you know, that was not a weird thing for her because, you know, she in a sense, her own home was a cosmopolitan space. And yeah.
Yeah, the flattening. Actually, what you're describing is with television is probably the reason why the civil rights movement was able to happen when it did, because television made it a flattening narrative that was universal.
That's what I was thinking as well. Just in terms of like I think TLC is kind of one of the responses, particularly when we remember to meet up in person. Like I think it's great, you know. And in terms of like addressing these sorts of issues, like honestly, we could probably even say in a climate change sense, it's like, you know, I don't want people sitting behind computers all day, but if people are having deep philosophical conversations, that's better than like, you know, a lot of the other things that we could be doing, which are not like great, you know, in an environmental sense as well. You know, I don't know. I think we're doing, you know, I think like this idea that I like, it reminds me of sociology and like, which is, you know, just the whole idea of like the importance of nature and stuff, and also the feminine and divine feminine. And I don't want to try and, I don't know what it is, honestly, but it's just, you know, like that. I think the counter to
McMo, you're muted. Oh, he's making music. Never mind.
Like the counter to this crazy
Jonathan, don't talk about the divine feminine, Jonathan. She's right there, man. Play it cool, bro. Play it cool. She's right there. But I do think you're right.
You know, just in terms of like people need to be more like the Amish in certain ways, you know? Yeah.
People need to be more echoey.
So sorry. That's on me, boys.
Well, there's the
sure.
Come on in, Sherry, and join.
Join the madness.
She's a lady.
Sorry, go ahead, Max.
Yeah, there's the like, you know, visible power and invisible power, and like there's something about speaking about anything that takes it from the invisible power, which is way more powerful than and it brings it down a little bit, and then you can kind of synthesize it and, you know, work through it and everything, and it makes it a lot less powerful. You know, now I guess we're on the topic of racism. I think that's like what happened, like this this powerful thing that you couldn't really talk about. You know, it was in the culture. You know, we don't really want to address it. It has so much power, even though it's not, you know, you can't really talk about it. But once you're able to talk about it, then it makes it less powerful. And yeah, so I really like the idea that the internet is now, and now we're able to really, you know, go even more granular and talk about these things. And
I recently saw a video, and shouts out to the Marylander for this, because he made a beat using a clip from this show from
he's the original Tim.
Yeah, the original Tim. But Ethan Hawke played John Brown in a show, and I think the show's available on YouTube. I'm probably going to check it out. But he has this awesome scene where he's shooting slave owners. And I actually, you know what? I think I'm going to try to find it real quick and play it.
Oh, like the classic John Brown. Like you're talking about the historical one?
John Brown, the
crazy John Brown, yeah,
abolitionist or terrorist, depending on which side you grew up on. But I will just I will point people towards finding the Marylanders channel and listening to it. But just this one scene, he's got 2 pistols in his hands and he's pointing them towards these bad guys who are hiding. And he says, "My name is Reverend John Brown, and I come in the name of the King of Kings, the Redeemer, the man of the Trinity. I am on the side of justice, and you are on the side of chains. In the name of the Lord, I say, get!" And I was like, that's all I'll need for encouragement for the rest of my life. Because I think that, like, there is a sense in which we've lost the heroic ideal. We've lost the stirring in our chests, the passions of more heroic ages, Kierkegaard would say. But there's a real sense that, like, maybe there's so much evil around so we can fight it. And part of me wonders, like, to what extent conversations like this can easily become distractions from the fight versus can these become, around the campfire after the fight? Can these become,
pre-fight,
binding each other's wounds and getting back out there? Or just in general to be encouraging that, there is evil still to fight against. But also, too, since Sherry's in the audience, making me think, it's not to say also that there aren't very subtle and sneaky ways to fight against evil. And so maybe it's not, double fisting handguns towards those who are committing atrocities. It's probably not that, But so, yeah, maybe there is. I think that there is also a sense to connect it to climate change. There is a sense in which the good is kind of always the good, in a sense. So, like, whether you're doing good for the sake of climate change or doing good for the sake of stewardship, you're still doing good, And so that's, I think, an encouraging thought for us. But yeah, I'm gonna get back to this beat now that I ruined my voice on that John Brown impersonation.
The beat goes on.
Do you know what John Brown's plan was? It was insane. Like, what he did was he got a whole stockpile of firearms, and his plan was to free slaves, and then the slaves that he freed, some of them would join him in his militia, and so his goal was to create like a liberation force of a slowly growing army of ex-slaves, going down and growing and growing. It was he had a plan, and he was going for it. It was a big deal. The people who were at his hanging were like every major player in the Civil War. And it was like right before it all kicked off. It was a major moment.
Worry not, I suppose. Worry not about climate change. That is the ultimate message.
Sherry, please jump in. You can't just tease us like that. You can't say, no, I feel like I have to jump in, and then say, but I won't. Yeah, take Tayo's place. He needs to go to sleep or he needs to go to work. I don't know how the time works over there.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go too.
Well, we've been here for 2.5 hours now, folks. And I think I've got a beat ready. So I'm going to go ahead and do the deaf bounce where I haven't listened to the whole thing. And then what will happen is I will play this on our way out. But you know what? Maybe it's time. We'll do kind of last words. Starting with Noah. No, Noah just talked. Starting with Jonathan, and then we'll do Max if he's still here, and then we'll do Neil, and then we'll do Noah. Last thoughts.
Starting with me, you said so?
Yes, please, sir, if you don't
mind.
mind.
Yes. I don't know. My final thoughts. I don't know. I think as we find ourselves in seemingly unprecedented times, I think local solutions that reconnect us to creation, including our body and our friends, whether that's even through the internet. Basically Christian communion. This is what we need, and hopefully in person as well, in addition to digital stuff, and that we can see that that's happening, and we must not worry. That, but we should also not turn a blind eye to the horrible things that are happening. That's what I think.
Well said, brother. Well said. Max,
Thank you,
you're up.
Thank you.
Yeah, agree, and yeah, great being with you guys and listening to McMo's new album.
Don't have air horns, but I can do it with my voice. Neil, let us know what's up. Also, plug your video. I think the evolution video is coming out tomorrow.
I want to say that I feel comfortable, and that's not true. I feel compelled to try to understand nature as best I can, not being afraid of, let's say, the reality of nature, knowing that there's something greater and beyond nature, having faith in the power that created nature and created us. And yeah, so I am able to speculate about things in nature and in this world because I feel sufficiently rooted in the things that are beyond this world. So I'll put it that way. So that's it.
All right, Noah. If you could make this last long enough for me to upload this song, that would be great.
Okay. You can just tell me to stop whenever you want me to stop. I'll just
Okay.
keep talking.
Oh yeah, I forget. It's like, what is it? It's like 3:00 over there for you. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's chill. Everyone should go and subscribe to Afriel's channel. He's been making good videos and should get a little bit more attention. They're really good. Listen to Reincarnated by Kendrick Lamar. I think that's a TLC conversation that needs to happen. And there might be a video at some point. Watch Blade starring Wesley Snipes. Just because it's a good movie. And I think that's pretty good.
Keep going. Keep
Do you
going.
need
Keep
do
going.
more?
I need
Do
a little
more?
bit more time, man. A little more. What's so you uploaded a video today? I did not watch it. What was the video that you uploaded today?
Son of a pilot.
I uploaded some more of my unscripted commentary videos where I'll play a video game and talk about something in the background. A little bit of thanks there to Montel Fish, who reposted a lot of the video I made about him. So
he's a fishmonger.
Yep. I also had a dream about Montel Fish last night where he was actually a child, and he walked up to me and shook my hand, and he was just a very small child. I was like, "Oh, that's you?" And he's like, "Yep, that's me. Hi." That was a weird thing that happened. Also in that video,
so what you're saying is once you get 2,500 views on Montel Fish, you have a dream. That's the quantifiable, extrapolated relationship.
Neil's fishing for friends, and Noah's befriending fish.
Well, maybe.
I will make you Montel Fishers of men.
There you go. There it is.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
I talked about the flow state.
Go ahead.
Are you ready?
Oh no, you keep talking. Keep talking.
Okay. I've been talking about the flow state
fishies
and about how hard it is to make yourself do anything and get into a flow state. So it was a little bit of ranting about that. That's why the video is titled "The Masculine Urge to Flow." And I guess other people need to as well, or something like that.
The demiurge.
The demiurge.
The masculine demiurge to flow.
The dark urge.
Well, thank you very much to Kale, to Phlebas, to Noah, to Neil, to Jonathan, to Max, to Tayo. We will talk about reincarnation. Maybe next week on Sunday Chill Stream. Join us here.
Reincarnated, and it feels so good.
And with that, Neil earned his last and final mute of the stream. Even though I love when he sings, it's just too fun to mute him. But thank you everyone for sticking around, and thank you for everyone who joined. I am going to send us out. I'm going to actually remove us one by one. Let's see. How do I do that elegantly? Oh, and you're doing it yourselves. That's actually very helpful. Thank you, fellas. I feel free to message me on Discord, and I have a couple of hours to talk before I fall asleep, probably. If not, no worries. But I will send us out with the piece of music I was making in the background the whole time. I've barely heard it because I was really concentrating on what hopefully you were concentrating on, which was the flow of the conversation. Hope you enjoyed it on this chill stream. Feel free, if the love in your heart requires it, to follow my Ko-Fi link. It's the holiday season. It would be nice to have some secret funds that only I can access in my PayPal so that I could buy my wife a secret gift. Don't tell her. Nobody tell her. If you see my wife out there, don't tell her about the secret gift. But if you send me some PayPals on the Ko-Fi link, I can get her a secret gift. Other than that, thank you everybody for joining. This was very, very fun. I was kind of just expecting to kind of decompress from a trip and to play some music. But yeah, feel free to go check out my album. And in the meantime, here is the beat.
And our desire is to do His will. Countries, then what needs to get done will get done. It causes, and we don't really need to worry about as a species. We're adaptable. You know, okay. Number 3. What's number 3? It's kind of like not worrying about. Oh yeah, like they're bigger fish. They're on the way. We've got bigger issues. Because there's a reason why you're not worried. Correct. Climate change is going to affect us over 100 years, and the bigger issues that we're dealing with now are going to affect us 20 to 30 years. Or even live life like your actions matter. The thing is that thank God they don't. Such that you should be worried, because that would kind of be demonic in a sense, or something like that. How long ago did you come up with that? I don't want you to worry. You know what? I think Nyland Noah. No, a couple days ago. Are we speaking now? Is this Nyland Noah on this response? Perhaps. Did you say it again? What was it? I think that maybe. Oh, live life like your actions matter. Thank God if they don't. Or a solar flare, or like a meteor. Yeah, I would add another thing, which is thank God if they do too. You know, yeah, stuff in the atmosphere. Thank God. And like, there's this little clip of Donald Trump. Somebody being like, "Oh, it's warming." He's like, "Get cold." Jonathan, have you seen the telepathy tapes? Like, what the fuck does he mean by that? Telepathy tapes? But like, there's some people who be like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." The telepathy tape. This is what me and Cam were talking about originally. It's this podcast about people with nonverbal autism who are being told pretty convincingly to display spiritual gifts, such as telepathy. It is. He's right. And our boy Rupert makes a. I don't know if it's true or not, but anyway, so like, I've not seen that. I joined right before Adaptable Kale's not trying to fellowship. I think like well, you're gonna have to check that out, brother, because it's right up your alley. I was thinking about you the whole time, and I was like, me and Jonathan share Morphic Vineyard. Yeah, no, I'll check that out. It reminds me of a lot of times bigger fish to fry. I also it's like these are again, it's not super different. I kind of like they're just able to encounter your reality differently, and then in addition to that, what have it's not. I don't mean to make Kelly doesn't have, because obviously it's like this ability to find amorphous, collaborate on such crazy little topic. I completely agree with that. I mean, I think a results.
Yeah, but that's
I'm not
happening.
worried again.
But technology all the time is making things more energy efficient, less expensive. So what I mean by that is like the ability for people to do more work remotely, let's say, so that I'm not gas guzzling into an office all the time.
I guess
or yeah, like there's countless pieces of technology like that that have inevitably
climate change is like this
the
apocalypse.
carbon footprint.
Peter
Double
Thiel
the
recently did an interview with
double the pleasure,
Institute,
double the fun, with double
and he was saying that we have these two things to navigate.
I'm still listening.
Still
I see that
resist
Noah has started playing solitaire.
the apocalypse and the Antichrist, and he sees that.
How do you, so you have a virtual
that
camera?
society
and you put it
talks
on
so
your
much
virtual
about
camera.
apocalypse.
Hey, I wanted to. The youngest among us would do that. I wanted to rebuke both of you in saying, "Oh, ye of little faith." That I do think that humanity can act as one,
and also Jonathan Bishop also says.
In one sense, I think it's impossible, but in the other sense, it's like impossible with man, impossible for God.
It's actually.
So,
I think it's also in a sense where we're already sense.
Yeah, and that was the other thing I was going to mention was the radical, providence of God. That He is working within His personal relationship with every single individual to do exactly what needs to be done. And so, if we don't live in the time of complete agreement, then we don't live in the time of complete agreement, and He's got His reasons for that.
Come together.
What's more important is that we all
this is also the image of
are
the whole
tapped in and tuned in to that, right? Like to that thing that, and this is why we can have kumbaya as various denominations and religious beliefs and political beliefs. Is because if we're certain that God has us right where He wants us, and our desire is to do His will, then what needs to get done will get done, and we don't really need to worry about anything. To be clear, that's a temporary thing. I'm not worried about it. It's like they're on the way. I'm not worried about it, but it's gonna be a thing. Worry, but it's 30 years, and then it's like brimstone or whatever. There will be a solution.
Deep philosophical conversations. That's better than like a lot of the other things we do, which are not like in environmental sense as well. I think we're doing, I think like this idea that really reminds me of sociology, which is, just the whole idea of like the importance of nature, and also the divine feminine. I don't want to try to, I don't know what it is, honestly, but it's just, like that I think the counter to always make it like the counter to this crazy climate change. Just in terms of
wants us, and our desire is to